I should probably know this. On a foggy Tuesday morning, it'll be Corbin Lingenfelter in for Mark Dykton the rest of the week. Where is Mark? Is he just end of the year? Take the vacation that's left?
Yeah, well, you only get to send so many days from this year to next year, right? They only carry over so many days, so he has days. So I don't know. Is Mark at home? Is he asleep? Is he going on another extravagant vacation? I have no idea where our guy's at. Come on.
He's in line at Disney as we speak.
He's driven to Florida like 3 times, I feel like, in the last 6 months, has he not?
Yeah, no man, I think, has been more to Florida in a very, stealth way. I feel like it's like, oh, yeah, we decided to go to, stop at Pigeon Forge and then went down to Disney. I'm like, wait, what? That was a 48-hour trip.
He has very full weekends. I sit on the couch and, wrestle a 15-month-old and lose bets on football. That's basically what I'm doing.
Sure. If you did that last night, you watched, I would say, one of the final efforts of the season down there in Bloomington for Mike Whitson's bunch. We'll hit on that today as they start Big Ten play. 1-0, the pretty convincing victory over the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Again, the Pacers have a very quiet week. Rick Carlisle will join us, easy for me to say. Coming up at 8 o'clock today, they will practice today. I assume that P word, the Allen Iverson practice, will be something they will do a lot here over the next 2 weeks. They only play 2 games, Friday and Sunday, in the next kind of 10 to 11 day window. And I would say this is probably one of the more look in the mirror moments for Rick Carlisle in his second run around here with the Pacers.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. Last year he mentioned it was right around this time of year. It was a little bit later. It was a couple weeks later, if I'm not mistaken, where they got some practice time, and that's where they made some changes to the starting lineup, if you remember that. And I think it also signaled we realized there might be a guy or two on this team that's not going to be around for a while. But, boy, I feel like in the next 10 or 11 days, and I know it's a long season. I know it's 82 games, but don't you kind of feel like a little bit – this is, the next week and a half is going to go a long ways if they're going to save their season or not. What's happening on the floor, some of the body language stuff, some of the frustrations, I think, are kind of boiling over. So I think it's a combination of they get to take a breath and kind of reset. And then I think the other thing is they got to get, and this is individually, this is as a team. I mean, these guys got to get their ass in the gym. Tyrese Halliburton can't be 1 of 8 from the field, from three-point range, and those sorts of things. So, to me, if they're going to save their season, and if they do save their season and end up doing something pretty damn good this year, I think we're going to point back to this time in mid-December where they do that.
They have an open roster spot. We'll get to that news item from yesterday. Again, Rick Carlisle going to join us coming up at 8 o'clock. Colts are back to kind of their normal routine, so they will start practice tomorrow as they return from their bye week and, again, get ready for what is just a monumental game coming up Sunday in Denver. The Cincinnati Bengals did beat the Dallas Cowboys last night at Monday Night Football. That game really not a whole lot of bearing on anything from a Colts playoff standpoint. But this game, as we've said time and time again, the numbers are pretty obvious. You win, 65% chance to make the playoffs. You lose, that is a 9% chance to make the playoffs. It's pretty rare in Week 15 of the NFL to get one game that could shift your playoff odds that significantly, particularly one not in your division. Sometimes you'll get a Colts-Texans matchup in Week 15 that would have it. But this is it. If you want a realistic chance, maybe a better than realistic chance is probably the right way to put it, it's got to be a win on Sunday. And if not, all those questions that we've had probably for several years now come back on the table.
Well, what's going to be frustrating if they lose that game on Sunday, I mean, KB, it's going to be the same conversation you mentioned for the last couple years, but especially going back to last year and now this year, right? It's going to be the same conversation. Except, last year was Tyler Goodson having the unfortunate play on 4th down. This year, whatever happens in that Denver game, that's going to be the conversation, is it not? Like, we're going to have a new play to talk about. So, I heard yesterday, I thought you asked him a good question about Gus Bradley. I know we want to discuss that. I just think in general, I don't know, and I want to talk about this with you. What is at stake besides simply making the playoffs? I find that, I don't know if I want to say, analysts or insiders or fans, media, whatever it may be, I feel like there is a very split that if they don't make the postseason, heads are going to roll. I don't feel that way, and I don't know if you feel that way. I don't know, instead of heads will roll or nothing happens, if we can meet in the middle, and I think it goes back to the Gus Bradley discussion that Steichen had yesterday. But, I mean, when you look at what is it going to be, 15? Week 15 of the NFL, I mean, going into week 15, there is no bigger game than Broncos-Colts. What that is going to mean for the back end of the playoff race, who is going to get in to the playoff race. I kind of feel like if Denver wins, our playoffs are basically set with a seeding here or there up for grabs. That's about it.
New Purdue head football coach Barry Odom, he will meet the media coming up later this morning. Hope to have the head coach of the Boilermakers on at some point here this week. Look at official buyout numbers, about $3 million exiting UNLV for him. So if you add up all of this, the $9 million for Ryan Walters and that buyout, the $3 million for Barry Odom, and then wherever you want to gauge his contract, $4 or $5 million, something around there. $17 million payday.
It's a lot of money
for Purdue, obviously.
That's what that Big Ten money's for, baby. Let's go.
Both those buyouts fall just in the 2024 cycle. Those are not annual payments, but that's what it looks like for Barry Odom. Again, he will meet the media coming up later this morning. I do have a couple college football playoff thoughts as we've now kind of transitioned to the bracket itself. Just kind of tweaks to it I would like to see, and then continued anticipation to what is a week from Friday. I mentioned this to you, I think over the last couple of weeks, Notre Dame really made a strong statement, I would say, before the start of the season and saying, yeah, we care about academics. We do a lot of prayer over that area called the Grotto, but when we're over there, we also pray for football.
You damn right you do.
And they decided to push their academic calendar back a week this season.
That's
so they
cocky.
will have finals next week. It was cocky.
That's cocky. I like that.
Fortunately, they lived up to it for my sake.
They did.
And that they will have the dorms open through Friday night, and so the students can stay on campus for that game. Indiana made the move yesterday to bump up their commencement, the winter commencement.
Did they?
A little bit earlier.
Okay.
A week from Friday.
Did you get that faculty email? Is that what you got there? Okay.
Yes, I got
like that.
I got the faculty alerts, I believe it was. So
they're moving it from where to where?
9 a.m. and noon.
Okay.
A week from Friday. I forget the actual commencement times. I assume they're a little bit more late afternoon, early evening commencement time. So, nothing like, Grandma Jones has been waiting for, little Betsy to, graduate from Indiana. And now she's got to get down to Bloomington a little bit earlier. And I loved in the statement, it said, the opportunity for our students to go to South Bend for the game. I'm thinking,
how many students are paying $1,200?
Go out on a limb and say of that 3,500 ticket allotment, I don't know how many will be walking.
So basically,
Friday morning at Assembly
Indiana
Hall.
did this at 2, 3 o'clock. So if you graduate at 9 a.m., you're good. If you graduate at noon, it's over by 1:30.
You better gun it up 37 and 31.
Well, you got to go somewhere with the family after to eat, right? Isn't that like the normal thing? You go to some sort of lunch, so you're done at lunch by like 3 o'clock. So IU's basically telling you by 3-ish, 3:30-ish is when you can officially, if you're a graduate, start your pregame for the Notre Dame game, whether that's in South Bend or obviously it's back in Bloomington. I know way too many people in Bloomington that because a lot they're not calling every name, right? I mean, you're standing up as a group. There's thousands and thousands of people graduating that they just skip the graduation. They skipped and they went out to drink. I'm like, well, no offense, you can drink right after. You couldn't just go and attend for an hour and a half and then go drink. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think if your allegiance lies in that you want to be attending the Notre Dame-Indiana playoff game, you probably will go without walking.
Yes.
And without walking, I mean standing.
You're standing, point. Yeah. By the way, speaking of Barry Odom, I got down just a rabbit hole of Purdue, because when I started here, a year and a half ago, I didn't follow as many Purdue Twitter people. I followed enough Indiana Twitter people that, my timeline would be full of Hoosier Jeff and those sorts of guys. But there's a guy by the name of Boiler Burner 1. Okay, on Twitter yesterday.
It's not Boiler Bill who would always tweet us?
It wasn't. I don't know what happened. I hope he's okay. I didn't block him or mute him or anything. Anyway, so there's a guy named Phil. He tagged me in this. Apparently, Barry Odom, if we have him on the show, I want to ask Barry Odom about this. Barry Odom rode a bull when he was the coach at UNLV. He went bull riding. like he's in it's a normal event. He went bull riding, and
He's got the look of an effective bull rider.
He was on the bull for about 2.5 seconds. Corbin, you ever been to a bull riding event?
Yes, I have.
I figured you had.
Have you been on, Corbin?
No, I have not.
Do you think Corbin's been on the bull?
Why not?
What's that supposed to mean, Andy?
Well, I mean, you're a bigger guy. Usually those guys are smaller guys. They wouldn't put me on a bull. They'd put KB on the bull. But anyway, yeah, I mean, there's Barry Odom right there riding the bull. How about that?
Damn, he got bucked hard.
Yeah, I think he got a concussion, honestly. He kind of staggers off. The guy that's dressed up like a clown has to help him to the side.
9 a.m. today, Barry Odom, we announced in West Lafayette for that. Again, I thought last night, Indiana, I mean, certainly it was back and forth that first, 8 or 10 minutes. And then after that, they were clearly the better team over, a team that certainly is one of the worst, if not the worst, in the entire Big Ten. But, all in all, I think it's been a pretty good response since the Bahamas.
I would agree.
Granted, the competition is the competition. I know Miami of Ohio hung in there for about a half. But, I think coming into the season, the thought was Miles Rice would be your catalyst, and he would be the guy that, you would lean on heavily for offensive production. He's got 2 points. Not like he was handing out a million assists, and you still score 82. That's a very good night offensively. I just felt like their rhythm offensively was the best I've seen it. I thought Umar Ballo was very good. And probably, I shouldn't even say probably, I would say easily the best we've seen from Caden Carlisle, the transfer from Stanford. He has been banged up, came off the bench last night, and I thought it was easily his finest performance in an Indiana uniform. They will go to Nebraska Friday, and these are the games that I don't know if at Nebraska truly resonates to a lot of people. These are big, big games. When you do nothing in the non-conference, these are the games that matter. And so there's a lot of these in the Big Ten. On paper, these are, 50-50 type games. They qualify as the quad one wins, especially.
Yes, they do.
When you're talking away from home. So with the non-conference being as grim as it was for Indiana, you need a strong Big Ten season. And again, last night is not going to be some overwhelming resume data point come mid-March, but I thought it was one of their better 40-minute performances of the season.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Looking just forward, and I'll get to the game last night here in a second. Right now, Ken Pom has this as Indiana wins 40% of the time, just 47, and then has them losing this game by 76-75. ESPN's matchup predictor gives Nebraska nearly a 63% chance of winning on Friday. So, listen, I'm with you. If you're going to make the NCAA tournament, it may not be a sexy matchup, but getting these quad one and quad two wins, I think on the road in Nebraska would give you one or the other there. I'm watching last night, and I'll give you my thoughts on Indiana here in a second, but I was struck with, and I know he hasn't always played there the last 3 years, but why does Dawson Garcia stay with Minnesota? That's the first thing I always think of. And I know he's played, in North Carolina? Did he play at Marquette? I can't remember if he played. So he's been around college basketball for a while, but everyone transfers every year. And I'm watching Dawson Garcia have to be a one-man band, and I'm thinking, in today's day and age where everybody leaves, this guy's voluntarily stayed on what is going to be, and listen, Minnesota is going to be, they're already 0-2 in the Big Ten. They're going to be near, if not the bottom of the Big Ten. But I thought there were a couple things. I thought, at times Mike Woodson made it difficult on Minnesota because he was playing modern style basketball where they had to worry about guys that could shoot the ball on the perimeter. And when that happens, it opens up the offense. And then they also got to play the Woody style of basketball, the Mike Woodson style. And that is a severely undersized, undermanned Minnesota team. He could feed the post and let his bigs work. And you saw that with Ballo with 18-7, Malik Renew with 16-7. Mackenzie Mbako obviously plays a little bit more towards the perimeter, but he was in double figures last night. So I think Zach Osterman of the Star had it right where they got a little bit of the new age stuff that fans have been clamoring to see with Mike Woodson, but then Mike Woodson had his way as well last night by being able to get his bigs involved. Minnesota stinks. Again, I can't believe someone doesn't offer Dawson Garcia some cash. Where's Shrewsbury? Come on, let's go.
Yeah, well,
come on.
How about that one?
This guy's good, man.
I thought that Dave Repson mentioned during the broadcast that he had been offered significant amount of NIL elsewhere. And
I can't believe he's not taking it.
If I'm not mistaken, I want to say he's from somewhere, Minneapolis or somewhere close to campus on that. And a shout out. We'll probably have to do our all positive Pacers segment at some point here this week. I might add to it something from last night. I think I've told you before, my nephew is a big Benedict Mathurin fan. I've probably instilled some of that into him.
I was wondering, where did he get that from?
He was at the game last night with his father, so my brother-in-law, and lo and behold, they head to the bathroom. And who's in there? It's Benedict Mathurin and Andrew Nemhard.
Okay, I saw they were at the game. Well, good for them.
Courtside last night.
Oh, my goodness.
My brother-in-law, and I'm sure a very non-awkward manner, it makes it clear to Benedict Mathurin. My nephew is a big, big fan, and Andrew Nemhard chimed in. He needs my jersey because Benedict can't guard me.
So did they say hi in the bathroom, or did they wait till they got out of the bathroom?
Yeah, I didn't get into too many details on when hands were washed or anything on that end, but I was told that very friendly interaction with Benedict Mathurin and Andrew Nemhard. So thank you.
I saw they were front row there. I like that.
Thank you to those two from the Pacers, and I'm sure making the night and maybe even the year for my nephew on that. And reminder, Pacer-wise, Rick Carlisle, he's going to join us coming up 8 o'clock. I will add, I don't know if you guys experienced any of this at all, a little foggy on the commute end. So,
some 2-hour delays, right?
Just FYI on that. I didn't think it was anything like severely poor, but if you live in some areas that maybe the fog shows up a little bit more, keep an eye out on that. Again, Corbin Lingenfelter on the 1s and 2s the rest of this week with Mark Dykton out.
Yeah, Mark's probably somewhere exotic. Yeah, we decided to drive, to the West Coast. We went to go see the Hoover Dam and then drove back, not a big deal. Just a couple days out West Coast, nothing crazy. So
climb up and down Red Rocks a few times.
Yeah, we just went up and down Red Rocks. Not a big deal. So we do appreciate Corbin waking up early with us, and you, the listener, the same. Coming up on the other side, your morning check down to Shane Steichen. It's been a week. We have Shane Steichen sound. What did he say about the Broncos? Plus all your news and scores from overnight. Appreciate you waking up with us. It's a Tuesday, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
All right, coming up in a bit, not only Rick Carlisle at 8, why was Chris Ballard particularly emotional here recently watching the Colts, and could IU and Notre Dame both have some good news in terms of their college football playoff path? So a lot to get to. Andy Sweeney, I think you'll start, though, with the Colts and a big one on Sunday.
Yeah, it's been now about a week or so. Obviously, they had the bye week since we've heard from head coach Shane Steichen, so always good to do that yesterday. We'll play sound as we go today. Let's start with this. Everyone knows how big this game is on Sunday, Broncos and Colts, and Steichen was asked about it yesterday.
We all know we're not going to be oblivious, to how big this game is, but we know that we got to handle our business and we got to prepare the right way and go play a football game. That's going to be the main message.
Afternoon game, 425. I think the first one they've had, right? If I'm not mistaken, first 425 game they've had this year. Spread currently sits at 3.5 for the Broncos and Colts on Sunday.
Yeah, and again, just to nerd out over some numbers, it's a 56% chance of a playoff difference, whether it's win or loss. For Indy, for Denver, it's 47%. You just rarely get it in Week 15, that massive of a difference between both opponents, particularly not in the same division. So a huge one. Again, Colts to get back to practice coming up here tomorrow. Last night in Bloomington, it was the Hoosiers. I would say one of their better efforts of the entire season, particularly offensively. 82-67 over the Golden Gophers. And really after the first 10, 15 minutes defensively, they were very stout as well. Yes, Minnesota's not very good, but still 82 when Miles Rice only scores 2 is an impressive number. Kanan Carlisle, probably his best game in an IU uniform coming off the bench. He had 14 points, a handful of assists, knocked down 3 triples on that one. So, again, as Big Ten play starts to arrive for Indiana, it just carries more weight because the non-conference resume was always going to lack substance. And then with your effort in the Bahamas, it now really lacks substance. So you need a big-time Big Ten year. They will now travel to Nebraska coming up on Friday, and that will be an important early Quad 1 resume opportunity for the Hoosiers.
Still the fighting Fred Hoibergs there, Nebraska?
Still fighting Fred Hoibergs.
You probably got another contract extension.
Connor
probably over
Seagen, remember him? The Wisconsin transfer,
sure.
the Fort Wayne native there. I think he's their second leading scorer.
All right, well, there we go. So that game's coming up on Friday. Last night, Monday Night Football, as we put Week 14 of the NFL season to bed. 27-20 Bengals over the Cowboys. I did not stay up, but I saw it this morning, and it made me smile. KB, did you see how this game basically ended for the Cowboys?
That was one of the wilder plays I've seen in the NFL this season.
So for people that don't know, they went to the 2-minute warning, and it's a 20-20 game, right? It was 20-20, right?
Yes, it's fourth and a million.
It's 4th and a million. The Bengals are going to concede. Obviously, they're punting. The punt gets blocked, and the Cowboy player decides to try to touch the ball while it's fluttering on the ground. He touches it. He doesn't cover it. The Bengals recover it. And then like a play or two later, boom, Burrow, Jamar Chase, touchdown. Bengals end up winning the game. So there's nothing better for me to wake up to, because I'm a man who is in full misery, mostly with sports anymore, to wake up and see Jerry Jones's face. A sad Jerry Jones. It made my Tuesday morning just a little bit better. So that's your final 27-20, the end of Week 14.
Yeah, it's a sad reality as a fan where that's where your fandom has to lie.
Hey, listen.
It's like Purdue football fans a week from Friday. Can Notre Dame and IU both lose?
If Notre Dame was having an iffy season, you would be living through the pain of Brian Kelly at LSU. And that would be fun. I would accept it.
Yeah, that's probably a sad state, but you're probably right on that end. Tonight, Butler back in action, 6:30 tip, North Dakota State. They are a 14.5-point favorite in this one. North Dakota State, they gun it from the three-point arc. They attempt the most threes of anybody in the nation from a percentage standpoint, 7-4 on the year. So this looks like one that actually won't be just some outright cakewalk on paper here, and this is a stretch for Butler of the only non-ranked opponent they'll play in a 5-game stretch here. So they've got Wisconsin, of course, coming up on Saturday, the Indy Classic. We'll talk more about that as the week moves along. It's Butler, Wisconsin, and it's Purdue, Texas A&M, noon and 2:30, the tip times there from Gainbridge Fieldhouse coming up on Saturday.
Love Buzz Williams. Love those vests. I hope he wears a vest to Indianapolis coming up this weekend. Final thing for me, Heisman finalists announced yesterday. I don't think really too much of a surprise. Miami's Cam Ward, Oregon's Dylan Gabriel. Of course, Travis Hunter there at Colorado, and Boise State's Ashton Genty. Any takeaway on that? I mean, I believe Hunter's going to win.
Yeah, he's the overwhelming favorite.
I don't think it's going to be too close.
Genty is certainly next on that list. I think the question was, okay, who would round out 3 and 4? Was there any other debate besides Dylan Gabriel and Cam Ward? Cam Ward put up some incredible individual numbers.
Yeah, I think there's been names thrown out there. I think what was it? Army's quarterback or running back? I forget which one has.
Yeah, Bryson Daly
has some pretty good numbers. I think there's been a couple guys, but I don't think there's anyone that anyone's crying about too much, right?
No,
like these are the basic guys.
That pretty much made sense there. So yeah, the Heisman ceremony coming up. Of course, we'll get Army Navy coming up on Saturday.
Coming up on the other side, I know KB, you have a thought on the college football playoff. IU and Notre Dame coming up next Friday. Plus, Colts, what's at stake? A thought on Chris Ballard as well. We got you to 10 a.m. Appreciate you waking up. It's a Tuesday right here on The Fan.
Is that a Notre Dame kickoff anthem from Corbin Lingenfelter?
How many times do they play that at a home game? Just once, or is it a bunch?
I feel like it's just the opening kickoff.
I feel like sports radio gas bags use this song a lot as well. I've known a lot of shows that
I
have
feel like Mark
led with that.
Might have dialed that up for the New England week.
I think he did, yeah. I'm pretty sure he did.
Back.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, why was Chris Ballard emotional
Okay.
during that game? We'll get to that here in just a second. And Corbin does lead in with that Notre Dame music. I would say potentially some good news. I know it might be a little bit looking too far ahead for Notre Dame or Indiana on that end, but we'll share that upcoming. Reminder, Rick Carlisle, 8 o'clock here on this Tuesday morning. It will be a heavy week away from game action for the Pacers. They don't play till Friday. Friday, Sunday, and then nothing again until next Thursday. So they'll practice today. We'll chat with Rick Carlisle at certainly a big crossroads in the Pacers season at 10-15. They did make a roster move yesterday. For those commuting in or have yet to do so here on this Tuesday morning, I would say the fog kind of caught me off guard a bit. Maybe I should have paid attention to it a little bit more last night, particularly in kind of the northern to eastern part of our listening audience here. Several 2-hour delays in that part of the state here, part of the local area. So keep an eye out on that here on this Tuesday morning as there is some fog.
You're not supposed to put your high beams on, right? If you're out there in fog, you're supposed to just keep the low beams on. Is that right?
Correct.
Is that what they say?
Yeah.
Okay.
As a son of a driver's ed teacher, I think my dad somewhere is probably nodding at you with that comment.
My driver's ed teacher was an older man, and what he always told me, and I thought, this is not bad advice, but he said never have your window half down. Have it all the way up or all the way down, because if you get in a wreck and your head slams into the window, it might slice your face up being half down. Is that I want you to take that back to Papa Bowen and see if that was good or bad advice that I got at 15 years old.
I mean, I think it checks out.
It's graphic. It's a
Yeah.
little graphic for 7:30 in the morning.
I think that checks
Okay.
out, though.
Okay.
Well,
so we learned something.
nothing says comforting, and let's give everybody a hug here
Yeah.
at 7:36 on this Tuesday morning. An emotional Chris Ballard back during that New England final drive. Ballard, again, as we've said during the bye week, we did not see him make, which he sometimes makes an appearance on the Colts podcast. So really, we haven't heard from Ballard much at all this season. He doesn't typically speak very often during the year. I'm trying to think. Wasn't he on Sirius XM back maybe earlier in the season? Joined Bill Polian, I think, on one of those
I think that's it, yeah.
shows. Jim Trotter from The Athletic wrote a piece on Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson having these, I don't know, is resurrection the right word? Guys getting benched and then now back in the lineup. Richardson, I would argue, due to maybe, again, some off-the-field stuff, Joe Flacco being bad. Bryce Young more to Andy Dalton's injury. Speaking of car accidents, right? Andy Dalton on that end. But Jim Trotter from The Athletic wrote a piece on these two and them getting back in the lineup and then both having some good play. And Chris Ballard shared this quote with Jim Trotter about Richardson in particular with the Jets comeback and the Patriots comeback. Ballard said this, Andy. 2 of the last 3 weeks, he's had winning drives and clutch moments. I mean clutch. Against New England, we eat the clock up and leave 12 seconds on it. It was a thing of beauty. The drive was 19 plays. 19. I got teary-eyed watching it. I really did. And
I like
quote.
that. I like that. He also mentioned, and this may not be where you want to go, he also mentioned that, they were second-guessing themselves playing him his rookie year, Anthony Richardson, which I'm surprised wasn't a little bit more of a story, but I could understand why Colts fans also wanted to get AR on the field.
Yeah, he did.
I could get that.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously hindsight very 2020 in looking back on that because, really the night that Richardson was drafted, Shane Steichen, Chris Ballard, Jim Irsay were adamant about, him getting that early playing time. I say this in all seriousness about that quote about an emotional Chris Ballard and watching the Anthony Richardson drive. I think I said something to the effect the Monday after that win over the Patriots, Andy, like, you might have just saved the season with that drive, and this is probably a tad hyperbolic, but you might have saved a bit of the direction of the franchise here in the little realm of where you're at late November, early December 2024. And again, I think when Ballard is watching him, again, it might sound a little bit extreme that Ballard's getting, whatever, overly emotional, but Ballard is referencing a little bit more of the, hey, you're watching the young quarterback grow, and he was dealt this hand where all of a sudden it's a surprise benching, and all these people are calling him out, and
Sure.
all of this, and it's a huge, huge eye-opening wake-up moment for Anthony Richardson. But you could make the statement that drive might have saved Chris Ballard's future.
I know.
And I don't think his emotions necessarily are in reference to that. But if you lose to the lowly Patriots, and now you are pretty much on the brink of playoff elimination before, the first day of December, that's not a good look on the resume.
And plus, it's just so embarrassing as a franchise.
So, there's a little bit of again, I know Ballard wasn't referencing his emotional state was maybe due to his job security, which, again, is something that is about as difficult to predict as Tiger Woods' back on a given morning. But that is a thought that I had when I read the quote, because I did think, Julian Blackmon's interception might have saved the season in that game, as much as Anthony Richardson throwing it to Mo Alley Cox on the first fourth down of that drive, and then obviously the rest of the drive that unfolded in that state. So, again, we haven't heard from Ballard much at all. I do think when he does talk, he shares some pretty candid moments, and clearly he had one in the press box a week ago Sunday.
Yeah, I know it's difficult for fans in media, but especially fans, to kind of separate things for a second. And what I found interesting about that quote is I just tried to put myself in Ballard's shoes. I mean, this is a guy that, even though you may not like the job that he's done, and I understand that many do not agree with the job he's done, he's still a human being in these sorts of things. And he's still, in his mind, doing it his way and trying his damnedest to put a winning football team. He's not trying to be a middle-of-the-road football team in the AFC. He's trying to make the playoffs. He's trying to put his team in contention to do some real damage, and it's not happening. This season has been up and down. And, I mean, listen, you have to feel the effects if you're Chris Ballard and his family and everybody else around him that, this doesn't go the way that we want it to go. At some point, this job may stop for me. And this is for someone like Ballard, for a football guy, it's a dream job for him and for most of these guys to be one of 32 general managers in the NFL and to have all the say and to have all the power and to run a team. And then all the Anthony Richardson stuff, which I thought you did a great job there, KB, of the last year and a half and especially the last several weeks, and the benching. And, with the benching became criticism. With the benching became, hey, are you going to trade this guy? And people made fun of the Colts. They made fun of Chris Ballard during those weeks when all this stuff was going on, whether you agreed or disagreed. And, it's one of those times where maybe a little bit of emotion comes out because something went your way, and many weeks things have not gone your way. If you're the Colts, I asked this question yesterday, and we didn't talk too much about it. Reading the quotes from The Athletic and knowing what is at stake this week and the next weeks after. I mean, if the Colts were to win this week, the conversation then goes to, you can't spit the bit against these teams that are dead. The Jags want the top pick. The Giants want the top pick. Will Levis is a mess. He's injured. The Titans are finished. It becomes you slayed the dragon in Denver. Now you got to take care of business. And if you obviously were to lose one of the next 3 games after that, it would be a complete disaster. But, with Ballard's emotion, I still sit here today on December 10th not thinking if they miss the playoffs that there's going to be wide sweeping change. Do you? Do you feel that way? Because I don't feel that way.
For the umpteenth time, predicting Jim Irsay is one of the more ludicrous things any of us could do.
Yeah, it's impossible.
So I always throw in that caveat. What gets Jim Irsay to make moves? Embarrassment. Would losing it in the final 3 games fall into the embarrassing category?
I think especially Jacksonville and the Giants. Of course, Jacksonville just won.
I would argue a home loss to the Titans would fall into the embarrassing.
You know what? They all would.
State.
It would be splitting hairs. I think the Giants are the worst team they have in the final 3 weeks of the season.
So I pose that, but I also pose this. 90% of resumes that have Chris Ballard's bullet points on it would have already led to a change at GM. So that's where I don't know. I guess is the sad cop-out that I have with this. Nick chimes in here and goes, I get teary-eyed thinking of Ballard's inept tenure. So I guess we have emotional states on both sides of the fence here when it comes to that. Again, I don't know. If you literally made me pick, will he be back or not? I probably would say yes, he's back. But, is there an element of like, this is just the final straw of like, hey, you can live with this, you can live with this, you can live with this, but now it's reached the point where it's like, all right, it might not be the actual, smoking gun sort of scenario, but we just can't continue to go down this path. And obviously there would be questions that you would have off of that of, what would that mean for Shane Steichen?
Sure.
Do you view Gus Bradley as more of the, quote unquote scapegoat once you get to the end of this season? So it's a great question. It's a question that I struggle with though, in the sense of what is at stake here in the final 4 weeks. Does it boil down to you make the playoffs or not? Is Anthony Richardson's trajectory more of the thing that Jim Irsay is going to go off of?
Well, see, I think that's the conversation.
Chris Ballard is signed through 2026 financially. Does he want to, continue to ride that out a little bit longer? So all of those are questions that I do have when it comes to this.
Think about this. There's not another team that right now is on the cusp of the playoffs that is like the Colts. And maybe, I think the Dolphins and Bengals would fit that mold, but right now they don't have the upper hand like the Colts do, right? If Miami would have beat the Colts, a month and a half ago, it would be different. But if you go, you go to the NFC, Raheem Morris just got hired there in Atlanta. If they miss the playoffs, the fall guy there is probably going to be Kirk Cousins, right? And maybe they go to Michael Penix Jr. I bring that up because no one's job is on the line in the NFC if they don't make the playoffs. And I'm talking about the teams that have 6 wins. Like Kyle Shanahan's not getting fired in San Francisco. If the Rams don't make it, Sean McVay's not getting fired there with the LA Rams. And in the AFC, I think you have a couple teams. Miami, I think Miami actually could be an opening. I actually do. I think Mike McDaniels could get fired there, and Zach Taylor maybe with the Bengals. But those teams are behind the Colts. The Colts are a very unique team that you almost feel like if they don't make the postseason, there's going to be an expectation by many that there need to be more changes than simply Gus Bradley. The flip side of that is I don't think everyone buys into that. I think there are people that are very split on this, and I tend to think that Anthony Richardson, especially who they play, will do enough. Move Denver aside. We'll do enough the final 3 weeks, and then you throw in the Jets' performance, you throw in a game-winning drive against the Patriots, and I could see him having a fine game. I actually kind of like the over in the game on Sunday with Denver. I think it's like 42.5. That he'll do enough to where you can say, hey, listen, this guy is figuring it out. He's a young quarterback. He's been injured. He's been benched. He responded. He's a different player than he was 6-7 weeks ago. And if you went into this season saying the most important thing was Anthony Richardson, there is a chance in the next 4 weeks that you feel like Anthony Richardson has taken a substantial step forward.
John chimes in here, goes, I just don't understand how you can't win the conference championship for a decade and keep your job, plain and simple. Well, John, it's not even the conference championship. They haven't been in that game. They haven't won a division championship in that time frame. So, yeah, I totally understand with you, and I think I've made that clear. But, again, predicting Jim Irsay is a very difficult situation. I will add this, and probably a topic we can get into more as the week moves along. I think Sunday is the biggest game of Anthony Richardson's football career.
Oh, 1,000%.
I think it has the most at stake of any game he's played. C.J. Stroud might encounter a game that looks like Anthony Richardson's game coming up on Sunday, maybe week 17, 18. If Houston, loses a couple, they could have a huge game waiting for them to close out the year. But think back to C.J. Stroud's collegiate resume and Anthony Richardson's collegiate resume.
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson went 6-6 at Florida. Certainly played in front of big crowds, obviously, in the SEC, but nothing at stake. Nothing like Georgia in the SEC in the semifinal game that C.J. Stroud got. Even Ohio State and Michigan carries on a bigger, at-stake prominence than anything Richardson played in. And then look at their NFL career so far. Stroud got the Week 18 game against the Colts last year. Richardson did not. Stroud got 2 playoff games. Stroud has, frankly, been in primetime a lot more. I mean, Richardson, right? None of his starts have been in primetime. The Minnesota game?
No, because it was Joe Flacco.
Was Flacco. So
throwing picks.
I mean, when you talk about the most at-stake game of Anthony Richardson's football career, to me it is Sunday.
Does that make you feel better or worse? Because I think AR won't be nervous. I'm actually not. He may not play well, but I don't think he's a guy that's like, I was nervous before the game. I don't see that.
I mean, I think for the most part, he's a very poised quarterback, and I think obviously he's delivered in the fourth quarter of some, key moments here in the last few weeks. But I just think this is another notch, if you will, on the belt, Andy, of this is different. This is, again, your Colts are walking into a road environment where the fan base doesn't hate their team. New England fans hated their team.
Well, the Jets fans, hated their team. God bless they hate their team.
Denver likes their team this year. Yeah. And this is going to be a crowd that cares. It's a December football game. I don't think the weather's going to look super inclement if you're keeping an eye out on that. But it's just different. Like in college football, when you get to mid-November, the games are different.
Oh, yeah.
In the NFL, when you get to mid-December, the games are different. So, again, I think that's something we can get into as the week moves along. I know it might be a little premature, and I'll do this for both fan bases.
Here we go, Corbin. Are you ready? Some college football playoff talk? Let's go. Come on.
But that was good news for IU and Notre Dame yesterday, the injury update out of Georgia, right?
With Carson Beck being injured. Yeah, Carson Beck's done, right?
Carson Beck,
he's done. He's got multiple
of the
injuries.
Georgia Bulldog. I think has sent a couple interesting pictures to maybe the opposite sex in his time or two that have made their way across the internet.
What do you call those, a Snapchat?
Well, Snapchat can disappear. Some of this stuff I don't think has disappeared. A UCL injury. Is that our Tommy John injury?
Is
that Brock Purdy?
It's a surgery type issue for sure.
He has a UCL injury, and it sounds like his status for the entire playoff is very, very much in question. 23 days away from that Sugar Bowl game. So literally, Andy, hear me out here.
I know.
For Notre Dame or Indiana,
start dreaming.
You are talking about a path where you would face Georgia and their backup quarterback in all likelihood. And then if you win that, it is either Penn State, SMU, or Boise to go to the national title game. Imagine telling a Notre Dame fan that at the start of the season, and imagine telling an Indiana fan. Obviously, two different maybe fandoms there, but that's the path right now.
Are you starting to dream?
I think it is probably
just
one
a little
of the more,
bit, just a little dreaming.
I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't bring this up on air. Let
right.
me be clear.
Sure, you're right.
Because how many times can you point to NCAA tournament paths where, whatever, let's say the 2-15 game is the first game in a region, and the 7-10 team is sitting there watching it, and the 15 upsets the 2, and the 7 seed's like, can you believe this? If we beat that 10 seed, we get St. Peter's in round 2.
It's the story of John Calipari. When I was following Kentucky basketball, they had 3 favorable draws, and Cal lost every single one of them, including Oakland, by the way.
Yeah. So then you go out and you lose to the 10 seed.
Yeah, then you lose. It doesn't matter.
You're laughing at yourself, or you're crying probably more than anything. So I just bring that up for Notre Dame and Indiana fans out there. What a path. I mean, it is quite amazing that you could face. And again, Georgia, I still think is a pretty quality football team, but still, they would have a backup quarterback in all likelihood. And then after that, again, it's a trio of SMU, Penn State, or Boise State standing between you and a trip to the national championship.
You're starting to feel it. I like it. Here's what I would say: don't people hate Carson Beck? People have been dogging Carson Beck. There is a sense
then you watch
of
the backup play 60 minutes, and you might start to hate him too.
I don't know anything about Gunnar Stockton. He looks like a guy named. He looks like a guy named Gunnar Stockton. He really does. He looks like every SEC quarterback ever. That's what he looks like. Gunnar Stockton. He's a sophomore. He was all right the other night. I don't know. He runs the ball more than Carson Beck. Boy, poor Carson Beck. He came in. He was going to be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft.
I'm surprised
everyone hates the guy
type
now.
Of injury doesn't happen more to quarterbacks.
Wow, you're not wrong.
We consider some of the hits in the pocket. My dad, the former driver's ed teacher, has chimed in. Agree with Andy.
Yep.
Low beams and fog. Never heard about the half-down window, but it seems to make sense.
Okay,
so for our
an odd
audience
thing
that maybe is just tuning in here in the last 10 minutes, Rick Carlisle, by the way, coming up at 8, you have said here to never ride with your window halfway down.
Yeah, just in case. He said slice your face up if you get in
and
if you get in a wreck.
driver's ed teacher that shared with you back in the day?
Yeah, and I can't remember his name either. And I scored like a 99 in driver's ed. I was very good at driver's ed. It helped the old GPA out a little bit at Jeffersonville High School. I think we had an old Toyota Corolla, something like that we were driving around in. Sonata, something like that.
This line... still 7.5. Notre Dame favored over Indiana.
You surprised by that?
A little. I thought it'd be more in the 4 to 5 range.
50.5 is the over/under too. That's right in the middle. The lowest over-under is Ohio State, Tennessee this weekend. Or next weekend.
You got to worry about weather before you look at over-unders.
I know. I know there's college basketball, but what are we going to do on Saturday?
Army-Navy, game of the year.
Yeah.
Come on now.
I mean,
you got to settle in at 3 o'clock and watch the
Listen,
intro.
I'll watch Army-Navy. I'll have some fun with that, but that's not a 3.5-hour sit on the couch and veg out and, come on, drink some beer and watch college football all day.
Put your hand on your heart. Listen to great songs. Great. The CBS intro is always
it's always good.
Outstanding.
It's always good. So, Rick Carlisle going to join us next. Boy, the Pacers have been struggling. What can they accomplish here over the next week and a half? Pacers head coach, he'll join us next. 8 o'clock hour around the corner right here. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
All right, tad foggy on the old commute in on this Tuesday morning. Some 2-hour delays kind of in our northern to eastern section of our listening audience. So keep an eye out on that, particularly if you are in those areas. It is Tuesday. It is 8 o'clock. You know what that means. It's actually a quiet time from a game standpoint for the Pacers here upcoming for the next week and a half. That means practice later today for Rick Carlisle and the Pacers. Coach, good morning to you. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, very foggy driving in, so be careful on the northeast side.
Thank you for that. Yes, again, right in kind of that just north of Indy in the eastern part of our listening audience, some 2-hour delays there. Coach, what will be the focus when you guys hit the practice floor later this morning?
A number of things. Hard play, clean play, fast play, and solid play. This is practice time that we very much need. We've got 3 days here before we travel, and we've got to put it to the best use possible.
I'm not saying that the issues are necessarily the same as it was this time last year, but I remember you came on with us right after a loss to the Clippers last December, and you really harped on the need for practice. I don't think you guys had a chance to practice in a while, and you pointed to that as, I don't know if a turnaround would be the right way to put it, but you certainly started playing better basketball after that. Do you view this opportunity there? Again, I don't know if the issues are the same, but do you view it similar in any way?
Well, we definitely need the practice time. I mean, we have too many turnovers. That's one of the big issues. Rebounding has been a constant challenge. I mentioned clean play. Clean meaning, when you're in the penalty and the other team's in the bonus, late clock, late in the quarter, you got to avoid bad fouls that put them on the free throw line. These are all the small margin things that catch up to a team, and there's just a lot to address right now. But yes, we need the practice time. Yes, these will be full practices today and Thursday. Tomorrow will be a bit of a lighter day as we try to schedule the week out for the best possible results for the game in Philly on Friday. But definitely much needed.
Pacers head coach Rick Carlisle with us on this Tuesday morning on the Payless Liquors hotline. Coach, a second ago you mentioned playing hard. I know a couple nights ago you mentioned effort. So playing hard and effort, do those things frustrate you potentially more than some other things, and how do you fix that?
Well, practice time will help. I think right now everybody's got to feel a level of frustration and a level of anger about, the way the Charlotte game went particularly, but just with the season overall. And it's been tough. We've, for a long period of time, we've lost 4 of our most dependable and persistent defensive players and guys that are very important to our system. And so, we got to make it work with other guys. Young guys got to step up. As a coaching staff, we got to do a great job, making those guys fit in the way that they need to fit in. But look, you get beat by 13 on the boards, against a team like Charlotte that's missing guys and that's playing small. You've got to point to the fact that you can do better.
Again, he is Rick Carlisle. He's with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. It's probably the quietest week of the Pacers season, really. They'll play Friday and Sunday, and then their next game action will be a week from Thursday. So a lot of practice time here for Rick Carlisle and company. Coach, you were asked the other night about consistency and why you guys have struggled with that. You felt like at the time that was an answer that was hard to kind of come up with, but something that you said you needed to think about as you've thought about that answer, if you have, over the last 24, 48 hours. Why has consistency been such an issue for you guys?
Well, I mean, if you're going to make excuses, the number one thing would be the fact that we've been missing the guys that we've been missing, particularly our perimeter guys, Shepard, Neesmith, and Nembhard. Now, Nembhard's been back for 3 games, and we've been working his minutes level back up. But those are 3 very important guys. Isaiah Jackson's a very important guy. He's one of our best rebounders. He's one of our best pick and roll defenders, and he really is an important part of how we play fast and how we move the ball. And so, in the absence of those guys, other guys got to step forward and we got to make it work. And it's been challenging. And so, these days of practice are very important.
Do you find yourself, Coach, is it difficult in times like this to stay positive?
Not at all. We show at least 2/3 to 3/4 when we show film of positive stuff and things that we want to be doing. When we keep the corrections at a 25 to 30% ratio, you have to show positive images. I mean, an NBA season is hard, it's challenging, it's difficult, and players get beaten down with negativity. It's just not worth it. And it's interesting. I've told this story quite a few times over the years in different settings, but I had a chance to visit the Oval Office back in it was Obama's last year in office, and he had a plaque on his desk that sat on his desk that a senator who was a good friend of his had given him when he first took office, and it says 4 words: "Hard things are hard." And so that's what an NBA season is. And so you've got to stay positive, but you've got to get your team to embrace the hard things. And sometimes the hard things are how the pieces fit together. Right now we've got to embrace each other. We've got to look at each other and see what our strengths and what our weaknesses are, embrace the strengths and help with weaknesses, and always be finding a way to make it better.
And he's Rick Carlisle. He's with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. It'll be Friday the Sixers, a Sunday Pelicans coming up here, and what will be a heavy practice week for Indiana. Coach, you guys waived Moses Brown yesterday. Do you expect to make a move at center here upcoming?
It's possible. Don't know for sure. I'm pretty certain we're looking at a lot of different things or possibilities, and so time will tell. But there is an open roster spot, so it's a good question.
If you put some of those personnel issues aside with injuries and guys that you don't have, how much has some of the struggles just gone back to kind of that preseason emphasis that you shared with us about, either not embracing the physicality emphasis we've seen around the league or not adjusting to it at the level that you need to?
Well, the second half of last season was physical. I don't know if it's exactly the way it has been this year, because this year started that way, and it was announced and pretty much proclaimed at the coaches meeting, which I've talked to you guys about, which is good. It's good to get that out there and make sure everybody knows what's what. But look, we were not a particularly physical bruising team last year either. What defined us was our persistence and our speed. And so, this week we've got to really focus on the same things. Physicality can be defined a lot of different ways. It can be defined as bruising physicality, in the trenches, offensive lineman type physicality. And some teams have that. We don't. It's not one of our characteristics right now. And so, our physicality has got to be one of persistence and constant hard play and speed and attitude coming at you, and that's where we've got to pick things up.
Coach, you mentioned rebound. You mentioned that a couple times, and the answer is it probably is everybody. But where does that start? To be a better rebounding team starts where or with whom for your team?
It's got to start with everybody. Because right now we're seeing more perimeter crashing than we've ever seen in this league, really from top to bottom. Charlotte has 2 guys, Martin and Green are crashers. Philadelphia hurt us last time with perimeter crashing with the other Martin and some of their athletic wings. And so it's always probably been viewed as a thing, the 4 and 5 men got to, clean up the boards and all that kind of stuff. Things have changed. I mean, the vectors on the court, guys are flying in from every which way. And with all the 3-point shots that are going up, you get a team like Charlotte that shoots 45 to 55 threes per game. I mean, they're sending their athletes in there, and when they miss, the long rebounds are coming out to the perimeter. And so, years ago, I mean, we looked at this in Dallas, and when we had some rebounding struggles in those years, we estimated that from our perimeter positions, that means the 1, 2, and 3 positions, we needed to get 20 to 22 rebounds from those positions. And so, as we move forward, that's what we're going to be looking to do. I don't know what the exact number for this team is going to be, but I'll double check it metrically, but it's got to be a hell of a lot better than what we've been doing. And I know we can do it because we have.
Practice coming up today, Thursday, and then back on the floor Friday. A couple more minutes here. Pacers head coach Rick Carlisle, and as always, we appreciate the head coach's time on this Tuesday morning. Your 3-point attempts, it's not a number that's drastically different than last year, Coach, but you guys are 27th in the league in 3-point attempts. Is that like an area that you feel like you need to get up more shots, or do you wish was higher, or is that something you can kind of live with?
We like as many quality threes as we can get. We haven't played as fast this year. Some of it has been the personnel situation. Playing fast is one of the things I identified with your opening question. We'll be working on that over the next 3 days. Playing fast doesn't necessarily mean you just take the first shot or the first three that presents itself. But when you play fast, you flatten out the defense, and you can create more problems, and you have more time to create problems. If you don't get something in the first 6 or 8 seconds. So, that's a big part of it. Getting Nembhard back into the fold on a more consistent basis will help, because penetrators and playmakers will help you with 3-point shooting. And, Neesmith and Shepard are 2 of our better, quick catch and shoot guys. Mathurin can do it, but his style of scoring isn't quite the same. Walker's been getting better with quick catch and shoots. Furphy can do it. But just think about it. We're bringing up Furphy's name. I mean, Furphy's the guy we drafted to play, 60 G League games this year. And all of a sudden he's in the rotation, and he's doing a pretty damn good job. And so some of the things that he's bringing, one of the reasons he's getting minutes, he runs hard, he moves it quick, and he does a lot of the things that Neesmith and Shepard do for us when they're healthy. And so that's why he's bringing value. And as I mentioned to you guys, I think during the summer when we talked, or maybe it was in June sometime, Shepard was our number 1 net rating guy in the playoffs last year. And his speed and persistence is very sorely missed as well. So, we've got to find it other places. Furphy's one source, and we'll keep looking for others.
Last one for me, Coach, and Rick Carlisle with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. This is not about your team. It's kind of silly. I like to end with these sorts of things. So Bill Belichick has interviewed and is continuing to talk with North Carolina football. The old ball coach might go back to the college game. I'm wondering for you, obviously at this point in your career you would not do that, but were you ever offered? Did you ever talk to a college? And do you think ever in your career you could have coached in the college game at any point?
My love is the NBA game. It always has been. Growing up, I think I have spoken to you guys about it on this show. I followed the game through magazine publications because we didn't get cable TV. We'd have to drive, 5 or 10 miles into the nearby city to watch games on cable in the late 60s and 70s. And so the NBA has always been my love. I've been asked probably more casually than anything about interest in some things over the years, but this is what I love. And the college game is so different than the NBA game. And now with all the different dynamics of the college game with NIL and the transfer portal and everything else, it's really so different. It would be, I would think it would be a lot like just completely starting over, and it's a different game and different set, not a totally different set of rules, but different 40-minute game instead of 48. And I think that's a huge difference, and we see those differences with FIBA as well. So I'm sure that Coach Belichick will be brilliant at anything he does. I mean, I've been so amazed and compelled with his TV work. The guy's
He's good.
The guy's fun. The guy's funny. He's brilliant. I mean, he's showing a side of himself that he didn't show very often when he was the head coach of the Patriots and at other places. But it's been fun to see, and wherever he ends up, he'll be the best of the best. I'm quite certain of that.
Practice tonight, practice coming up on Thursday as well. It's the rare week in which the Pacers have the opportunity to get on the practice floor twice in 3 days, and clearly Rick Carlisle is looking forward to that. Coach, as always, thank you, sir. Appreciate the time, and we will talk to you next week.
Okay, thanks, guys. Take care.
That's Rick Carlisle right there on the Payless Liquors hotline.
I don't know I asked him that question about staying positive. I don't know what's more difficult, the X's and O's or staying positive in a world where, a guy like Tyrese Halliburton, he pays attention to social media. He pays attention to what people are saying about him and his team. How much positivity do you think is out there? To me, that would be the most difficult part. And, think about it, KB. It's not something that this team had to deal with too much last year. They had losing streaks. They had some down moments, but for the most part, the Pacers were an uplifting story, a feel-good story. What they did in the NBA Cup was something that caught people's attention. What they did in the playoffs was something that, for the most part, obviously a couple of those Boston games they would like back were very positive. So for some of these guys, especially for this unit, this is the first time this team is having to deal with negativity together. And they gotta get a couple wins and help save their season here. They're still okay-ish, but they gotta get a couple wins.
Yeah, it's I've always enjoyed the conversation with Rick because he's not afraid to play bad cop or good cop.
Agreed.
And
right.
so I thought it was a good question you asked him of why, because it feels like it has been, and I know there are certainly some quotes on Sunday that he was bad cop, pointed to the rebounding stat and just said that was effort. A lack thereof, of course. But I'd say for the most part, it's been a little good copy over the last couple of weeks. And I find it interesting, like him and Shane Steichen couldn't be different in that area. I mean, I asked Shane yesterday at the Colts defense, and the first thing he says, he feels like Gus Bradley's doing a great job.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't find me one meaningful defensive statistic that the Colts would be top half in the league. Top half.
Not one. And the defense has put the offense in a bad spot in many games, including every game, time of possession-wise. I mean, every single game.
Dream of teachers to describe my effort back in the day as great
no
when
kidding.
The report card indicates otherwise. So that's why I do think with Carlisle, I'm always intrigued by what side or how he's going to walk that plank, if you will, with his team. I do think he is right in that they aren't an offensive lineman built physicality unit. That's not them. But the persistence and constant hard play, that's got to be a prerequisite. That can't be something that you're unsure about when the ball is tipped.
Right.
Like when you're not, the Detroit Lions up front, then you better make sure that your speed is there and you're the greatest show on turf and that you bring that, night in and night out. And that can't be an issue like it was Sunday night. And that's why I thought it was the worst loss of the season when you played a team like that. So, again, this time last year, they were at, I wouldn't call it a similar crossroads, but they were at a crossroads. And I think it's unfair to call it similar because of this. They had just gotten off of the in-season tournament, a trip to the finals. In that. They obviously didn't sniff that this season. But then they returned from that, and they had horrific defensive effort for about a week. And Carlisle was pissed. He came on to us and mentioned, it was actually on a Tuesday morning. He was like, after the Clippers game, they gave up 150.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, we got to practice. And boom, you look at that game and how the team kind of evolved after that, and they started to play much better. And that's the question that I have right now. Again, there aren't games to point to, many of them. There are a couple, but not as many to point to in the first 25, Andy, where there is like, oh, that looks like the Pacers. And so I guess that's where my concern is different. And, Rick does harp on some of the injuries that they've had throughout the rotation, but I cannot wave that same flag as him and say that is a blanket excuse for 10 and 25. Because if you look at these teams, and we can go through the games, Andy, if you would like, The Pacers have 15 losses. That obviously is not good at this point in the season. You can point to about half of them where the opposing team has missed their best or best players, plural, and you haven't been able to beat them. You haven't had that yet. You've missed depth guys. And again, I don't want to discredit some of them. They are important pieces, but
it's not Halliburton, Siakam,
losing
Miles
sleep at
Turner,
night for
Benedict
Isaiah
Mathurin.
Jackson is different than
Right.
losing sleep at night for Paolo Banchero.
Right.
So when you lose to the Sixers without Embiid and Paul George, you lose to the Raptors without Scotty Barnes, you lose to the Pelicans without CJ McCollum.
Well, look at Toronto.
You lose to the Hornets
Yeah,
without
look at Toronto.
LaMelo Ball.
No.
You lose to the Heat without Jimmy Butler.
Yep.
I mean, you could point to nearly half of your losses where that team has missed their best player or two. So that's where, again, I don't think it's exactly apples to apples to this time last year when you had played good basketball and the bigger question was defense.
Well, okay, so think of it this way. Imagine the Colts' schedule here at the very end. After Denver, obviously, you get the Giants and the Titans and the Jags. Imagine if that was in the middle of the season and you lost all three of those games, or 2 out of 3 of those games. That's essentially what the Pacers have done this season. I mean, they lost to Brooklyn. They lost to Charlotte. They lost to Detroit. They lost to, I could bring, Memphis would not fit that. Memphis is 17, I think 8 on the season. They lost to a shorthanded Miami team, Orlando team. They lost back, if you go back a month ago, they lost to Charlotte. They have a couple losses to Charlotte. The reason I bring that up is, and you've alluded to it, and this is a big piece going forward, the schedule gets more difficult. It just does.
Yeah,
and
they haven't gone out west yet. They go out west next week.
I mean, I know Philly's been a mess, but depending on who plays and doesn't play, Philadelphia, we know what Joel Embiid has done to the Pacers the last several years. And you talk about Phoenix on the road, Sacramento on the road, Golden State. You have Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City, one of the top teams, obviously in the NBA. Back-to-back games in Boston, Milwaukee. It's just. Now comes the part of the schedule where you knew you were going to lose some games. The unfortunate part for the Pacers, it feels like they have let how many games, KB? 6, 7 games get away from them that sitting here before the season, we would have counted them as wins, right? We would have said, this team is 16-9. Something like that. We would have added 6 wins. I really think it's that many games. I mean, definitely 2 against Charlotte. And the game against Orlando without Banchero.
Sounds like they'll do something at center here. We'll see exactly. Maybe we'll have Tony East hop on tomorrow and kind of share some thoughts on what they could do there because rebounding has been a problem. So, again, practice today, practice Thursday, Friday with Philly. Looking ahead to Philly, Maxey, Embiid, and Paul George, they all played in their last game, and they don't play this week either. So
are they going to be good to go?
That's always
they
a
injure
big
themselves
question mark.
going
Granted,
to bed?
Embiid could step on the elevator wrong and potentially
miss 2 weeks.
Be out for that game. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. All right, upcoming, got some thoughts. College football related. I would say Indiana University made a clear statement yesterday in their care level about this game coming up a week from Friday. We'll talk about that. But Andy, go ahead and lead us off on a morning checkdown.
Tuesday, December 10th. Get your seats by visiting butlersports.com/buy-tickets.
Yeah, after the bye week, let's start with the Colts. Shane Steichen meeting with the media yesterday. Now, in the 7 o'clock hour, Steichen was talking about, we'll let you hear the sound about how he and the team know, obviously, it's a big game coming up Sunday there, Mile High in Denver. But what about the development of Anthony Richardson? You mentioned this earlier, KB, playing in what might be the biggest game of his young career.
When you're playing meaningful football in December, I think it's big. I think it's real big. So to have an opportunity to go on the road in an environment that I'm sure will be electric on Sunday, they got a lot to play for. We got a lot to play for. So I think it'll be good in his development to play, in these type of environments and on the road in these type of situations, for his development for sure.
Yeah, it's Colts and Broncos, 425 on CBS. You can hear it right here on the Fan. Denver still favored, KB, by 3.5.
So that's come down a little bit, right?
Yeah.
4.5 it opened up as, so coming down a little bit on that end. Indiana, one of their better 40-minute efforts of the season last night, particularly offensively. 82-67 over, yes, a bad Minnesota team. Caden Carlisle, tremendous off the bench, and we have not seen that, or not really said that about him at all as a starter or coming off the bench this season. He had 5 assists, 3 threes, 14 points. Bryson Tucker, 16 off the bench. Really a balanced night. I thought Umar Bala was very good. I thought Indiana took advantage I don't know if they had maybe a huge size advantage. They just frankly were more skilled in the front court there. When Miles Rice only has 2 points and you score 82, that's a pretty good offensive night from some of your bigger players. They will now go to Nebraska coming up on Friday, and this would be your best win of the season if you're able to get it done so far. Just based off of a resume standpoint, it's a quad one opportunity, and we'll stress this throughout Indiana's Big Ten slate, but when they lack what they lack on their non-conference resume, you're going to need a big-time Big Ten season from them, particularly in games away from home. Their first opportunity of that will come up on Friday in their first true road game of the year.
All right, so I'm just seeing from, give us a swoosh here. I'm just seeing from Nathan Baird of the Indy Star. Have you seen these numbers, KB? I know we've been interviewing Rick Carlisle. Some numbers are coming out ahead of Barry Odom's press conference in the next 30 minutes. So,
I have not. So this is his contract?
So, yes.
We talked about the buyout earlier.
Yeah, the buyout was about $3 million to get him from UNLV. Again, whatever, you pay that, you move on. So let me read this to you. Odom has agreed to a 6-year deal worth at least $39 million, okay? So 6 for at least $39 million. His base salary for the first 2 seasons is $6 million, and then it rises $250K each year for years 3 and 4 before going to $7 million per year in year 5, and then the final year of the deal, $7.25 million. Baird writes, what's not available right now is the assistant coach pool. I would imagine that would go up. Walters had $5.5 million for 10 assistants. Again, I would imagine that'd go up at least $2 or $3 million for sure. So 6 for 39 at least. And I'm sure there are escalators. And in 2 years, if Purdue is an 8-9 win team, I'm sure they'll tear it up and give him a new contract.
So if you add up all that, $3 million to buy him out of UNLV, the $9 million to buy out Ryan Walters, and just north of 6 for him now annually, it's what, about $18 million?
Yep.
Was how much all this costs. I found it interesting. I kind of went into a little bit of rabbit hole on his recruiting classes at UNLV. Just curious, like what parts of the country. Certainly a lot of Texas flavor, and Purdue has actually had a decent history in the state of Texas, but a good amount of like in the Missouri, Arkansas, Kansas areas, which I'm like, okay, I guess that's not too far away from Indiana, but that will be something of course to keep an eye on. It's not like UNLV has got the same sort of geographic footprint.
Right. He's from that area
that Purdue has.
Yeah.
A lot of ties to Missouri. Joel Erickson, a Missouri
Oh,
grad,
is he? Well, of course.
We'll have to ask him about Barry
Of course,
Odom.
he's a journalist. Where
Coming
else?
up at 9 o'clock. All right, Butler in action tonight at Hinkle. It's a North Dakota State opponent that shoots a ton of threes. Butler favored by 14.5 in this one. Butler already has the very bad loss on their resume with Austin Peay. They can't afford another one, and they've got quad one opportunities galore waiting for them. Upcoming Heisman finalists, no real shock. I guess maybe Shadur Sanders would have been the one that could have cracked the top 4. Travis Hunter, Ashton Genty, Dylan Gabriel, Cam Ward. Those are the 4 finalists coming up on Saturday for that. And Monday Night Football last night, you were happy.
Yeah, did you guys watch any of the Simpsons one? I watched some of that. It's okay. It's okay.
I
it's
watched
fine.
a few of the highlights on social media.
Yeah.
But you actually consumed a drive with it?
It was okay. Yeah, I mean, most was social media. I would say a little bit of it. I didn't care too much about this Monday Night Football game, so I got to be honest. I
Explain
didn't.
to the audience why you were cackling when you woke up this morning.
Well, I mean, Jerry Jones, again, it was 2 minutes to go, tie game, the Bengals punt, the Cowboys block the punt, the ball's rolling on the ground, everyone just leave it alone. The Cowboys special teams coach is screaming, leave it alone. A Cowboys player touches the ball. It reminded me of Thanksgiving against the Dolphins, however, 20 years ago.
You would see in Maction,
Oh,
not
it looks
in
so
an NFL
stupid.
football game.
The Bengals recovered. The Bengals scored a touchdown a play or two later to Jamar Chase, and that ends the game. So fantastic stuff there in Big D. Let's take a break. Coming up on the other side, I know both of us have a thought on the college football playoff. Plus, we mentioned Barry Odom. What do we want to hear from him? His press conference coming up in a half an hour. Appreciate you waking up with us. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Tuesday chat, as Rick mentioned, and we brought it up with him. If for some reason you haven't been out yet on this Tuesday morning, it was a little foggy on the commute in. Not sure how much that's burnt off, but some 2-hour delays in kind of the north and eastern part of our listening audience. Andy, we focused yesterday's show on just what that secondary ticket market is looking like for Notre Dame and Indiana. I would say it's come down a hair. Let me emphasize a hair on that. It is still
okay.
Overwhelmingly the hardest ticket to find, and it is the smallest stadium of the 4 hosting a first-round game here. I think you were tagged in this after the show. Did you see somebody that sent us the parking pass prices?
Oh, dude, the parking pass prices are worse than the actual seat. Go ahead and tell people. I just can't imagine this.
And for those that have been to Notre Dame Stadium, there's a decent amount of parking lot spots.
Sure.
Just south of the stadium. Probably more kind of in front of the basketball, in between the basketball and hockey arenas, a little bit east of the stadium. A parking pass. Again, to park your car, people, in the stadium lot.
It's so stupid.
$1,302.
I just can't even imagine. I literally can't imagine.
You
Now,
want to go over to the Joyce lot? You want to go be toward, Micah Shrewsbury's, basketball tailgate? $1,595 parking passes.
Listen, I'm on ESPN has a thing with Vivid Seats. I need to try to find here if I can get a parking pass. I don't totally know the setup, even though I've been to the South Bend. It's been several years now, but can you not park a mile and a half away and get on one of those scooters and just scooter over? I mean, can you not do that or walk a mile and a half? I just cannot imagine spending, it's one thing to spend $1,000 on the game. That's the game. But this is parking. I thought parking at Jerry World in Dallas might run you $100. You go to New York City, it might run you $150. But $1,000 to park your Nissan Altima? Come on. What are we doing?
Pay that money, take the transmitter radio in front of Touchdown Jesus, and just listen
doing?
Over there for 3 hours. I've got 2 general thoughts now
right,
the
ahead.
playoff bracket has played out and what I would like to see moving forward. I want to see home games for the quarterfinal. So in this case, that would mean Oregon, Georgia, Boise, Arizona State would get home games.
Okay.
I think fan base, first off, I think those schools have earned the opportunity to have a home playoff game. It's just one, but I think they've earned that. I think it's a unbelievably cool experience. These kids, these universities, these local fan bases are going to get to have a home playoff game. I think the first 4 seeds should get that as well. I don't think it should just be an automatic buy into neutral sites. I am long been a believer, and I feel this way in college basketball. I love when we get non-conference games on home courts. I love that Alabama came to Mackey a couple weeks ago. That's awesome. I want more of that. Kansas came to Assembly Hall, last year. Indiana went to Allen Fieldhouse. I want more of that. I think fan bases are just traveling that much to watch their team is ridiculous. I mean, Oregon's path right now would be
the Rose Bowl,
a plane trip
Yep.
to the Rose Bowl,
Yep.
a plane trip to the Cotton Bowl,
Yep.
and a plane trip to Atlanta. And think about, okay, let's play this out with Purdue. Purdue last year for the national title in basketball. A drive to Indianapolis,
Indianapolis.
A drive to Detroit.
Yep.
I mean, we regionalize the NCAA tournament. We don't, first off, I don't think you can regionalize the NCAA football playoff as much as you can the pod systems across 8 sites in March Madness. So that would be one. I want home games for the quarterfinal matchups as well. And then my second thing would be I don't think there should be buys automatically for all the conference champions. I don't think Arizona State, a week before their final game, we had no idea if they'd be even in the Big 12 title game, and now they get a bye. And now they're 2 games away from the NCAA championship. I just don't, to me, Penn State and Texas are much more deserving of buys than Boise and Arizona State.
Yeah,
so
I would agree. I think most people agree with you.
So those would be
that.
the 2. Home games in the quarterfinal, not automatic buys for the conference champions.
All right, so my rebuttal would be, or my part of the conversation would be, how much politicking goes into some of the things that you are talking about. I think the majority of people listening probably agree with you. I just happen to think these items, especially the first one, probably won't happen. Let me ask you this then. What if you played okay, you have to. The reason they're going away in the second round from home games is they got to still give love to the bowl games, KB. You still got to honor the Sugar Bowl and the Rose Bowl and the Peach Bowl. You do. The bowl games,
why do these bowl games have such strong gravitas?
They have all of it. The hierarchy of college football and the conference commissioners are in bed with these bowl executives. And everybody has to make their money. And the bowls cannot be left along the side of the road if we have a college football playoff. So the question I would have is, I don't think you're wrong. Again, I think the majority of people agree with you. What if we played the bowl games in week 1? So in other words, and again, you can't do this, Notre Dame and Indiana, they were playing, what if they were playing in the Peach Bowl? KB, instead of you're getting the game at South. See, you want both rounds at home. You ain't going to get that. So, in other words, will you sell the chance that Notre Dame is going to have? And you're saying, listen, we'll be in the playoff, but we're not going to be playing in South Bend to honor Oregon, who has had the great season. So, in round 2, they could play a home game. Is that something you're willing to do? If the answer is no, it's going to stay the way that it is.
No, I just think the on-campus experience is something that has to be embraced. And trust me, I understand where you're coming from. And
you're right.
I get how the Bowls, are viewed in this light. Obviously, under my format, you'd rotate between 3 sites. You'd have the 2 semifinal games. Let's just play it out. Orange Bowl and Rose Bowl, and then the national title game would be in Atlanta, I guess, for the Peach Bowl on that end. I love when we do get I want these non-conference on-campus matchups to still matter. You hear Saban, why should we play all these non-conference games the other day if they're not going to matter for strength of schedule? I think that is so key for the sports calendar. When we get to college football season, we've waited months for anything.
Through the desert of Major League Baseball and the Dodgers and Mets.
Substance. And, what was the marquee set? I mean, we got Notre Dame going to Texas A&M.
I know.
That's
a marquee
great
game.
We don't want Texas A&M playing Prairie View A&M or Notre Dame playing, insert your directional school here to start the season. That's not what we want. So I want to try and make sure that we have the awesome fan base moments early in a season on that end. And I know it will expand, but I really hope it stays at 12. You get to 16 and 20. I mean, you're going to start to just allow all these mediocre teams, and the regular season is just going to lose more of its luster.
Yeah, 12 is enough. I think if we got beyond 12, then we're honoring Lane Kiffin or even South Carolina, and I like South Carolina. My thing is, I just want them to see the damn field. Reese Davis, and God bless him. I got to give him credit. Reese Davis did a great job expressing what we're all feeling a lot of times on these Tuesday nights and these college and on Sunday for the college football playoff show. To me, you seed the field, and if you're an 8 seed, you're an 8 seed. If you're ranked 6th, you're a 6 seed. It's none of this nonsense. I think you mentioned that. And the last thing I'll say is the one fallacy I've heard, and Joe Klatt of Fox, who I like very much, kind of put this out there. All of the whining and crying about the draw now that Oregon has, where they're going to face either Tennessee or Ohio State. And some of that, again, has to do with seeding. My thing is, it goes back to what you said. A team gets a good draw in the NCAA tournament, and they think they got a good draw to the Elite Eight. And we got a great draw to the Elite Eight, and now we have a chance to go to the Final Four. And then you're Kentucky and you lose to Oakland or St. Peter's or whatever it may be, and suddenly that great draw is gone. I think there has been too much of that the last couple days of, well, if this team does this, then I'm using Oregon as an example, then they have to face Tennessee. And it's I get it, but we don't know how the games are going to work out. To assume that we know what's going to happen in the first round that's going to affect the second round, that's the very thing we do in the NCAA tournament. And how many times have we been wrong? I mean, good God, how many times have Purdue fans, and I hate to say it, have looked at their draw and they love their draw and then they get beat by a lower seed? I don't know. There's just been too much of that, I thought, the last couple days, whining and crying about games that may happen.
Yeah, I get that.
Especially Oregon.
I just think that it's part of this time of year. And again, this goes back to my point about if you eliminate the buys, Andy, then you wouldn't have Tennessee and Ohio State as the 8-9.
Right.
They would have bumped up the rung a bit, I think, and you'd have Probably. Definitely Arizona State,
Well,
and maybe even Boise behind them.
If you had no automatic buys, Indiana would be in the 8-9 game this weekend against Boise State, and they would host. If you went no automatic buys, Notre Dame would be the 5. They would play in South Bend. They would host Clemson.
And
you and Jay Query.
So your buys would be Penn State and Texas joining Georgia and Oregon.
1,000%. Yeah. Penn State would be the 4, and Texas would be the 3, which should be the way that it is. Let's take a break. Coming up on the other side, we have a sound of the day, and then at 9 o'clock, Joel A. Erickson going to join us. So a ton to do. Appreciate you waking up with us on this Tuesday on The Fan.
We'll talk some Colts. Jolie Erickson coming up in 10 minutes. Again, the Colts will practice tomorrow. I know they've taken a couple Wednesdays and done a walkthrough, but as they come back from their bye week, they will practice. It'll be Colts and Broncos, 4:25 coming up on Sunday. One thing to note, this gets back a little bit into our Pacers conversation from earlier. I mentioned to you, Andy, I don't think, and Rick Carlisle joined us at 8 o'clock, I can't go with the blanket injury excuse. I would argue the Pacers have caught in a great injury break in many of their games this season with the opposing team's best players not playing. And they've lost. Probably about half of their losses you could point to those teams. If you look at it from a schedule standpoint right now, the Pacers at 10-15 have played the easiest schedule in the NBA.
Wow, have they really? Wow. I mean, we talked about it 2 segments ago that now things get real. I mean, the next couple weeks, the schedule picks up.
Hardest schedule the rest of the way. Again, they travel out west for their first West Coast trip. It's just kind of a brief one coming up starting next Thursday. They've got the Celtics in a back-to-back later this month. So, look, is there context to point out? Certainly. I'm not going to act like, guys like Aaron Nesmith and Andrew Nembhard are not, key pieces to putting the entire puzzle together, and Isaiah Jackson, could fall into that category, but that doesn't explain 10-15 the full way.
Here's the problem that the Pacers have. Let me just go back for a second. Last year was such a positive story for us, and I know Pacer fans, were kind of feeling things, and it had been a few years since they had felt, right? And then you get all the love nationally. You do what you did in the NBA Cup. Tyrese Halliburton, you have the All-Star game, and he is the face of the All-Star game, and, he makes Team USA and everything. Things are going in the right direction. You get Pascal Siakam. That obviously worked out. And then, even late last year into the offseason when we had conversations with Coach Carlisle, basically talked about, hey, now you get a full offseason with Pascal Siakam, and you get a full training camp with Pascal Siakam. And Siakam had all the guys out into, where does he live? Orlando, where he's got his big estate out there. And, he's inviting guys down in the cohesion of this team. And, the guys seem to like each other. Everyone knows their role. By the way, this offseason, we need to remember everyone got paid, basically. Tyrese has been paid, and, TJ McConnell got some money, and Andrew Nembhard got a new deal, obviously, and Siakam got a max-level deal. And so everyone, a lot of these guys have got paid. And then this year, after last year being such a feel-good story, this year has been quite literally the opposite. And the Pacers have fed into some of these narratives that last year was a fluke or lucky or a one-hit wonder or whatever it may be. And so, I think here's the problem. I think fans are trying to figure out what is real here, right? Like, if I think some fans are trying to say, KB, that they're hoping that it's the injury situation because they don't want to believe that their team isn't going to be anywhere near as good as they were last year. That's the way I read it, and I'm having trouble just over the last year and a half trying to figure out who they are and where they're going. And unfortunately, because of the injuries, they might sit, and this is a little too early, but not too early. What are they going to do at the trade deadline? They have, are they buying? Are they going to go out there and add pieces to what has been a lackluster season? You have a guy like Miles Turner. Are you going to continue to pay the same group of players? And I think Turner is a pretty good player. Are you going to give him another contract? Are you going to match if other teams really want him as well? And then, we talked about it, especially with a guy like Obi Toppin. Obi Toppin was such a good deal by this basketball team because if you played with him under the deal, it was a good deal. And his contract, if you ever were looking to move somebody or try to acquire somebody else, his contract would be good in the trade market as well. I don't know what they are here in a month and a half when we talk more about the trade deadline. So I think besides them just not being very good, I think it's the question of the future and the question of what kind of team are they really? Are they last year, the first half? Last year, the second half? Are they what we have seen thus far in the preseason and through 25 games of the regular season? I think we went into this year thinking we knew who they were, and I sit here today not so confident.
We mentioned this earlier in the show. I do have to laugh at this. For those that missed it, another sign of Indiana University all of a sudden saying, hey, wait a minute here. we need to reward our student body from a possible attendance of the playoff game standpoint.
Oh, yeah, what did they do?
Yesterday, they announced that their winter commencement has been moved. So this is a week from Friday.
Yeah.
Their winter
for them.
commencement has now been bumped up to 9 a.m. and noon. You think these college kids are going to be up at 9 a.m. being like, yeah, let's go over to Assembly Hall and, stand up when they announce the school of, Jacob's School of Music here. So, yes. And they said in their statement to reward the historic opportunity that those might have to attend the game. Again, just about 3,000 tickets to the visiting teams for their respective first-round games. And it sounds like from Indiana, a whole lot of that is going to family and staff members, etc.
Well, I'm sure. How much red do you think
I think there'll
will be actually there? Because Notre Dame has got a bad rap. They've allowed some fan bases in, but I think Georgia's a little unfair. That's a matchup a couple years ago that never happens. Week in, week out, Notre Dame's not allowing 15,000 fans in, are they?
Right, and again, this is a historical game for Notre Dame fans. I mean, we've never had a college football playoff, period. So, for even Notre Dame fans that maybe have experienced a lot, this will be different. I just thought it was idiotic. One of the Notre Dame beat writers yesterday was like, the secondary ticket market means it's going to be all Irish in there. I'm like, no.
It's the opposite.
Sorry to break it to you, but it's not going to mean that. I mean, I think there will be a good amount of IU fans in there. Percentage-wise, I don't know, 20-ish%.
Yeah. See, that's what I was thinking. Now,
I still think you have a good amount of the Notre Dame fans that view it as, hey, this is our only home game that we're going to get in this playoff. And this is new. This is different. This is a December 20th home game in this stadium. Now, you will get some, Andy, that I think live outside of the South Bend area that will say, wait a minute, I can secondary ticket market for that amount of money, and then I can just pay for my trip to New Orleans if we win.
Right.
I'm going to do that, too. So
yeah, well,
I think you're going to get some of it, but
you kind of, I don't want to say you begged, but you threw it out there yesterday. Hey, if anyone's got a ticket that's not, $1,200, I would be interested. Has anyone come through? Has there been any conversations at all?
The DMs are open.
The DMs are open. Fair enough.
The DMs are open.
Fair enough.
It does. I mean, it sounds like this ticketing thing will be interesting. Like Notre Dame hasn't even, handed out all their tickets to. This is new for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
And exactly what your season ticket membership looks like. And, are you rewarding the top of the food chain from a donor standpoint? I mean, can you imagine if you were like an IU booster and you donate a ton of money?
I know.
And you're not able to go to the first ever playoff game?
That's where you're calling out to Scott Dolson. Hey, the NIL money and the money I have for a practice facility and 1,000 here and 1,000 there.
Those people making those decisions and dividing that up, because then also part of me looks at that and thinks, hey, Aiden Fisher's family should probably deserve to be there.
I'm telling you, look at these tickets, and we'll take a break here in South Bend. The upper level, the 100 level, the upper level there at Notre Dame, that's not the best deal. Those are like $800 and some dollars. You might as well just spend a couple $100 more and sit in the lower bowl. I'm not trying to tell people what to do with their money, but that's what I would do.
Well, no, I do mean in all seriousness. I think Notre Dame has a stadium it's fine to be in the upper deck.
I'm just saying you can get one that's much, much closer for like $200 more. You might as well just sit in row 23.
You got to save for the parking pass that
you're
paying.
Fair enough.
That costs $1,000.
That's unbelievable. I'll walk to South Bend. Let's take a break. Colts back in action this week. The keys to victory. We'll talk with Joel A. Erickson next here on The Fan.
As we speak to you on this Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock, new Purdue football coach Barry Odom meeting the faithful there inside of Mackey Arena. Those official numbers buyout-wise, Andy, for those that missed it all, if you add it up, what do we say, about $18 million?
Yeah, it was about 18. We probably need to throw on at least, $1.5 million, $2 million for the assistants that got bought out as well. So it might be right around $20 million.
Break that down. Of course, the $9 million for Ryan Walters and that buyout, about $3 million to buy Barry Odom out of UNLV, and then it looks like a little north of $6 million annually on his 6-year deal coming from Purdue. I guess we could sneak in maybe a Barry Odom question for our next guest, but we'll obviously keep it primarily to the Colts. He's Joel A. Erickson from the Star. Joel, you are a Missouri grad. Any thoughts on Barry Odom?
Well, hopefully he's learned some stuff since he took over at Mizzou, because, Mizzou's his alma mater. That's where he was a long time. You think about that as like a place where normally it's going to work out. It didn't really work out from a recruiting standpoint. And Purdue, Purdue and Missouri are kind of, in my mind, sort of in similar spots in terms of the Big Ten and the SEC, where you're not anywhere near the forefront of the conference. So you're going to have to do some creative recruiting to be competitive.
Well, that's not very uplifting, Joel. Yeah, I would agree, though. He followed Pinkel too, which was so difficult.
At Missouri,
yeah, he was about 500. I remember that at the end he got Kelly Bryant from Clemson, and that quarterback just did not work. Joel A. Erickson with us from the Star. All right, Colts, Broncos coming up this Sunday. As we enter the normal game week from the bye week, I guess, what are your initial thoughts on the magnitude of this game?
It feels like it's for all the marbles. Their playoff odds are 65%, I think, according to New York Times. If they win, it's like 9% if they lose. That 9% seems to be contingent on either the Texans losing every one of their games the rest of the way, or some weird 3-team tie. So anyway, fairly unlikely. And it feels like this game really could seal their playoff fate one way or the other. Now, obviously, maybe there's some other scenario out there we're not thinking of, but anything else seems like it's pretty off the radar as compared to if you beat the Broncos, all you have to do is win out and you're in. Probably. I mean, I don't think you don't have your destiny in your hands right away. But I think some of those AFC West teams have to play each other.
Yeah, again, just to remind people, the Broncos finish with Chargers, Bengals, Chiefs. We'll see how much Kansas City could be playing for in Week 18, but certainly on paper, that is a much, much more difficult final 3 games than what the Colts have. Joel A. Erickson from the Star with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Joel, when you talk about guys that didn't play against New England that could play on Sunday, Braden Smith, personal reasons, Josh Downs, shoulder, 2 guys on that list. Who do you think is more important for Sunday?
Yeah, I think Braden. The Broncos, I think, have 47 sacks this year. They can really bring some pressure off the edge. You might not know the names, Benito and Cooper, but it's 11 sacks and 8 sacks. I want as much of the offensive line as possible against this defense. I think you obviously probably want Josh Downs back, but yeah, this pass rush is significant.
Josh Downs, your gut feeling on Josh Downs. We were talking during the break, Joel. If Josh Downs misses this game, he's starting to string together quite a few injuries here in his second season in the NFL.
Yeah, well, I think that was the biggest concern with him, just because of the size. Now, the ankle, I don't know. I do think size probably helps, but it feels like that's just kind of a luck thing in terms of whether or not your ankle gets caught up. But yeah, that's definitely part of it. It's the hardest part is that they can't really replace him in the offense. You saw they tried to throw the tight ends more against New England. Not a ton of success with that. A.D. Mitchell doesn't have the decision-making abilities yet that Josh Downs does on option routes, that kind of thing. They can't really replace him in the offense right now. I think that's the biggest thing with needing him against the Broncos is you need that guy who's going to get open in the underneath routes.
He is Joel A. Erickson. He's with us here from the Indianapolis Star. Colts and Broncos, 4:25 coming up on Sunday. Joel, a post-bye week wrinkle you could see from the Colts, and while you think about that, like this is one that I've kind of jotted down. What about more Will Mallory instead of Kylan Granson? I don't know if it would overwhelmingly make a huge difference, but I think it's time at tight end you maybe try something a little bit differently. So whether you want to play off of that or something else that you're kind of curious about as the Colts have had their chance to self-scout themselves during the bye week, anything come to mind?
I think that's a great one. It just feels like Granson is on a different page than everybody else this year. I don't know if Mallory would get on the same page. They've struggled so much at tight end, but that feels like a great one to me. The other one, I wonder if maybe a little bit more to test the perimeter, give people a little bit more to look at. Now, you don't have Downs and you don't have Doolin, but maybe, you can get one of those wide receivers involved running-wise, something besides Jonathan Taylor to kind of get people's eyes moving away from him, because he's taking all the running back carries right now, and just something to be good. It's starting to feel like teams are going, let's take away Jonathan Taylor and take our chances with Anthony Richardson. I want to do something to get some of the attention off of him.
Joel A. Erickson from the Star with us. Payless Liquors hotline here on the Fan on this Tuesday. I guess this is more of a big picture take, and we mentioned you started off the interview with, the overwhelming odds. If you miss and you lose this game, you're not going to make the playoffs. It's going to be very difficult. But if you're more than a coin flip, 65, 67% if you can win on Sunday, besides just making the playoffs, not making the playoffs, on Sunday and then the next 3 games, so the next month or so, what do you think big picture-wise is actually at stake for the Colts?
Well, I think it really depends on Richardson. If you feel like Richardson has made strides since the benching and is on the way up to the point where he can be a more consistent starting quarterback, play the way he did at the end of those games a little bit more, I think you're probably okay. If you feel like you get to the end of these 4 games and he's regressed and gone back the other direction, then I think there's a lot bigger picture questions that probably will come up. But in my head, it's always kind of been a 3-year thing. I don't know if that's the way the franchise is thinking, but you've got to give him at least 3 years to find out if you've got something with the number 4 pick of the draft.
Joel, when I say the phrase deserved Colts Pro Bowlers, who, if any, come to mind for you?
I don't know if outside of maybe Quentin Nelson, without knowing the guard, without knowing what the guards look like around the league, I don't know. It's a tough one because Buckner's played well but missed 5 games. Taylor's been good in spurts, but it's a running back year. I think it might be a pretty light year for the Colts on the Pro Bowl front.
Well, the thing about Nelson, too, is I know he had a very good start to the season, but, boy, I just can't ignore the team high in penalties, and I don't – I get that, like, okay, you do have to compare him to the 15 other guards or I guess 15 times, well, here's my math is wrong. You have 15 left guards, you have 16 right guards in the AFC, so you have to compare them to all the other guards in the AFC, but it to me, it hasn't been like write Quentin Nelson's name in Sharpie like it has been in years past.
No, but on the offensive line, sometimes they write the name in Sharpie no matter what else is going on.
Well, yes,
so,
that is a good point.
So I think he's probably the best shot. But, yeah, it's been a rough year for everybody else in terms of the numbers you would need to be a Pro Bowler.
A week ago Monday, Joel A. Erickson communicated with me purely via the Notes app at dinner. It sounds like the voice.
Oh, it does sound better, yeah.
The voice has improved. I almost forgot about it. I feel bad trying to test it out here on this Tuesday morning. Joel, last one, the best non-family related item you did during your bye week.
Missouri beating Kansas.
Oh, that was a big one.
Tamar Bates, IU legend Tamar Bates went off.
That was a fun game. That's a heated rivalry that Joel, I know, went away for how many years? 6, 7 years, something like that,
yeah,
which was ridiculous.
Went away for 6 or 7 years, something like that. And beating them at basketball it's always good because that's what they care about most.
Yeah, that's such a rich, accurate statement by football. Joel, that's kind of how I feel as a Notre Dame fan with IU football coming a week from Friday. Like, IU football fan, I mean, they're just playing with house money. Like, I'm going to wilt and cry if Notre Dame loses. IU football fans will celebrate if they lose.
Yeah, well, I've heard some
Am I
Indiana
wrong?
fans.
No, you're not wrong.
I've heard some Indiana fans who are like, no, we're going to do something. I'm like, if it was me in their spot, and I feel like as a Missouri grad, I kind of understand their spot a little bit. I'd be going, I can't believe we're here. I'm happy to be here. Let's just see how long we can stick around.
Yeah, and let's make sure we enjoy the tailgate. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
literally, that's 1,000% to sum up Friday, week from Friday, I should say. Joel, continue to rest the voice. Thank you, sir.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Joel A. Erickson.
So
from
you'll
the
like
Sun.
this last night, it's my, I'm taking care of Mason and everything, and I don't know, maybe it gets like, he's getting ready to go to bed, I don't know, it's 7 o'clock or so, and I come upstairs and I noticed not a scratchy voice, but I noticed my voice had an issue. And I almost texted you 2 things. Hey, I don't think I'm losing my voice, but it feels like I might be at the very beginning stages of losing my voice. And then number 2, what was the ointment that you had on the losing the voice?
The entertainer spray.
The entertainer spray. Do you still have the entertainer spray?
I do. I think it's on my desk at home. Yeah, I do. I don't think it was very effective.
Okay.
I had a voice crack at like 7:09 this morning.
Yeah.
I think. I don't know if you caught that.
I don't think I did.
And I did the early water break in between segments, and I thought to myself, damn, is it happening? Because, I mean, this time of year.
I know. So both of us.
It's hanging on by a thread.
So that would be poor Corbin
Can
in for Mark
Corbin give
Dykton.
us some of his pipes?
Well, that would be the question. If KB and I both were like, our voices were 65% tomorrow, how would that show sound for 3 hours? Because usually it'd be just one of us would have a bad voice and the other one's good. In this case, the other one, in this case, it would be totally different. By the way, I don't know if this is like breaking news, but it's interesting. Sham Charania of ESPN, obviously a couple months ago, took over for Woj. He's reporting in his latest insider article that not only Brandon Ingram, that the Pelicans want to move him, but the Miami Heat are actively looking to move Jimmy Butler as well, which is pretty interesting. It would be waving the white flag, would it not, on Jimmy Butler? And I'm not sure that's a guy that, would fit the Rick Carlisle style, but Jimmy Butler might be on the move, perhaps even out of the Eastern Conference. Kind of interesting.
It seems like Miami, it's just like, when are they turning the page? How old is he?
He's 35?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah,
I was going to guess his mid-30s.
He's 35. He's
Is he healthy? I always feel like he's out. He was out
he's
against
always
the Pacers
out.
earlier this year.
I mean, he's got over $50 million left. I mean, his option next year is a player option for $52 million. So, I'm going to imagine he's not going to walk away from $52 million a year.
Yeah,
Come on.
It's December 10th today. The January 10th look ahead to the NBA trade deadline, which for those unfamiliar is the first week of February. Those could be massive for the Pacers.
Well, I mean, you also could have
Turner again isn't expiring.
Sure, I mean, you're talking some big time
and
players.
Walker on a rookie deal.
Sure. I mean, there's a chance you get 5 or 6 guys who are big time players who could be available. I mean, Jimmy Butler and Brandon Ingram would be squarely at the top of that list.
I must say, I don't know if it's sacrilegious, but let's go back to Colts and Broncos here for just a second. I half jokingly, it was half serious, would Colts fans rather win this game or be told that the winner of this game, that means Peyton Manning gets to say Colts before Broncos the rest of his life when talking about his stops in the NFL. But Bill Belichick, of course, was on the Manning cast last night. Did you catch Belichick on McAfee yesterday at all?
Well, I want to play some of that coming up on the other end.
Okay.
Yes, I caught. Yes. In short, I did see. They clip everything that he says, so I saw the clips.
I kind of laughed when I've heard of this Belichick, North Carolina, somewhat mutual interest here, but then I heard Belichick explain it a little bit more in detail, and you asked Rick Carlisle about it last hour. College athletics has changed a whole lot. And when you hear Belichick talk about it, it made a little bit more sense to me. And like, okay, I could see how an administration would listen to that pitch and say, in 2024, that makes a lot more sense than it would have in 2014 or 2004.
So it's interesting. Let's play that sound here in a second, Corbin. I've done some reading because I'm a little bit obsessed with Belichick. If he's going to go to the NFL, and obviously he's in his 70s, and Belichick, if he were to go to college, is just, it's like, to me, it's a super interesting story that the coach of our time, that this is kind of the end of his career, that the problem in the NFL is they feel like he's too old, he's not going to be around. Whereas in college, and we kind of had some fun with this yesterday, in college, if you're there for 3-4 years, that's kind of a long time in college anymore. But not only that, he would pass off potentially the job to his son. Is it Steve, the guy with the mullet? who was at Washington this year?
Steve Belichick.
Is it Steve
Great
Belichick?
Mullet.
He was
Great
now he
mullet.
was with the Huskies. He's not with the Commanders. So when I say
Correct,
Washington,
yes, the college.
he was in the college game, and Belichick said, he was around the college game. So I'm going to let you hear this clip. This is about a minute long. This is his pitch, what I believe is to North Carolina. And if you're North Carolina and you hear Belichick say this on the McAfee show, how do you not pony up the funds and hire Belichick?
In capital letters, if.
Yeah.
I-F.
Talk.
If I was in a college program, the college program would be a pipeline to the NFL for the players that had the ability to play in the NFL. It would be a professional program, training, nutrition, scheme, coaching, techniques that would transfer to the NFL. It would be an NFL program at a college level and an education that would get the players ready for their career after football, whether that was the end of their college career or at the end of their pro career. But it would be, geared toward developing the player, time management, discipline, structure, and all that would be life skills, regardless of whether they're in the NFL or in somewhere in business. And I feel very confident that I have the contacts in the National Football League to pave the way for those players that would have the ability to have the opportunity to compete in the National Football League. Whether they're good enough or not, I don't know, but they would be ready for it. I don't have any doubt about that.
Now, imagine if you're a North Carolina fan and the last 4 or 5 days, whatever it is, that your school and Belichick have talked. You hear that from Bill Belichick, and imagine in 24 hours I tell you Tyson Helton's your next head coach.
Yeah.
No offense to Tyson Helton.
And again, I'm still not all in on Belichick working out.
I am.
I nod my head. I mean, all we hear about people that played in New England was how miserable of an experience it was.
I know.
So do you think 19 and 20-year-olds are really going to soak that up?
I know, baby. Listen, I don't know what to tell you. It's easily, to me, I'm fascinated by the story.
Professional men that only need to spend 4 months out of the year in Foxborough is a little bit different than the college experience, where you're going to have to be in Bill Belichick's culture for a lot longer.
Yeah, but think about this. The NFL does not want Belichick. I mean, if he's doing this and he's openly on national television pitching the college game, to me, it tells me that Belichick now in this second cycle has talked to enough people in the league that he doesn't think he's going to get a job in the NFL. So it tells me he's went to college, and if he's went to college, North Carolina is a fine program, but I view it very much like we said, Joel, on a little bit like Missouri. It's easier to win there because the ACC isn't nearly as good as the Big Ten or SEC, but it also, does it not change the math a little bit in college that if you're an athletic director, if you run one of these programs and Bill Belichick is openly campaigning to be in the college game, does it change, and I don't mean this from a Purdue standpoint, but does it change the way you think about your program? I mean, if you're LSU right now and you have Brian Kelly, who is miserable, Bill Belichick is also miserable, but he wins, or he has won. Does it make you say, if you're one of these programs, we'll get rid of our guy, pay the $10 million and get Bill Belichick?
I don't have the answers. Corbin, do you have access to our Twitter account, our show Twitter account? Corbin, put out a poll.
Oh, I
Purdue
like
fans,
this.
Would you rather have Bill Belichick or Barry Odom? What do you think the percentage will be? Belichick.
I mean, I think it should be 75%. I'm trying to see if there's any Barry Odom quotes, too, by the way. I guess I need to start
Corbin,
following this.
Purdue fans, would you rather have Bill Belichick or Barry Odom? Again, I listened to that Belichick clip, Andy, and I do nod my head at a lot of it. I'm like, okay, I hadn't maybe thought of it from that angle. But I'm still sitting here acting like, is the transfer portal all of a sudden just going to be a pipeline to Chapel Hill? Like, is this a little bit of, you've got Southern Indiana dad and Seymour, it says, my son's going to go play for Bobby.
Yeah.
Are there a lot of dads around college football saying, my son's going to go play for Belichick?
You might be right.
Now,
I know.
Where a little bit of the where a little bit of the NFL alumni pipeline is going is to Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame. I mean, they have Brian Urlacher's kid on the team. They have Ryan Clark's kid on the team.
Plaxico.
They just signed a recruiting class with Plaxico, Burris, and Jerome, and obviously Bettis has the connection. But a lot of those other guys, there's no connection whatsoever to that. So, again, I nod my head at Belichick. It's fascinating. It's intriguing. From an entertainment standpoint, I want it to happen. I don't know if it is some slam dunk, though.
Here's the thing. Could Belichick surround himself with non-a-holes? Because Belichick is a difficult personality.
Well, and Belichick's got to walk the fine line of being the a-hole himself.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you've got in the college game, you got to bend the knee. And you know who, at times, I don't think has bent the knee? Is probably the guy down in Bloomington as the head basketball coach. I mean, how many times did Dan Hurley show up to Greenfield Central versus Mike Woodson?
I know.
You know, I mean, these are things that
I know.
To some people might say, wait a minute, my name, our brand should get us those players.
Yeah, not anymore. Not anymore.
That's a fine thought to have, but sometimes you've got to appease to 17 and 18-year-olds, and you might not know how the 17 and 18, the NFL, you draft them. They have to come to you. Obviously, that's a little different than from a recruiting standpoint when it's like, no, you've got to pitch. And certainly you can do it with a financial stake right now, which is different than it has been, but you've also got to do a little bit of relationship building on that end. That is very different than what an NFL program is all about.
We got to get to a check down, but last thought on this. Think of this, KB. Nick Saban right now. So Belichick and Nick Saban are both working for ESPN, right? I mean, they both are. I mean, they're not crossing paths, but two of the great coaches of our time are working right now at ESPN. Nick Saban, supposedly, if you believe him, got out of the gig, got out of the job because of factors not involving, quite frankly, football. In other words, Nick Saban, instead of saying, hey, I've won all these national titles, I'm Nick bleeping Saban, come to old Alabama, we have the very best. He's now losing kids to either the portal or he's not getting maybe some of the kids that he's used to because of NIL. I mean, because of the way that, and I'm not complaining about it, I'm just saying, Nick Saban was very vocal. He got out of college for a reason, for that reason. Bill Belichick in that sound clip acts like he can go to North Carolina, which is not an elite program like Alabama, which is not going to have the NIL resources of an Alabama. It makes, I mean, football-wise, makes nothing compared in the ACC to the SEC, and say, I'm a football factory, come to me. That didn't work for Nick Saban. Why would it work for Bill Belichick? The money and pay, when you have Michigan buying from LSU a $10 million quarterback, that, I mean, you tell Mike, to me, Brian Kelly, you have a better chance of developing as a quarterback than you do at Michigan under an unproven coach that plays in cold weather that runs the football a lot in the Big Ten. Like, which one? I mean, that's just my opinion, but it's not about that. I don't know. He also sounded a little bit like John Calipari to Bill Belichick. That will be the football factory. That will be the basketball factory.
A couple Barry Odom quotes. Let's share those on the other side coming up. We've got a morning check down. Barry Odom right now, I would say, many of these quotes, he's winning the press conference.
Okay, well,
he's saying the things
I'm sure
that
he
you
will.
want from your head football coach. We'll do a pop quiz here in a bit. Before all of that, let's actually begin down in Bloomington. Fine night for the Indiana Hoosiers and Mike Woodson's bunch. We'll start there on a morning check down.
Yeah, KB, 82-67. That's your final Big Ten opener for the Hoosiers last night. Indiana winners by 15. Really the front court dominant. Ballo, 18-7. Malik Renew, 16-7. Had 4 assists as well. So you look at the front court, pretty good. They also went small and had some success surrounding those bigs with some shooters. The big lineup, the small lineup. Here's Mike Woodson postgame.
It's going to be bigs throughout the Big Ten games that we play, and when we got a chance to go small, we try to do that too. I mean, we've done that every game that we've had this season so far. You gauge it based on how the game is going, and who's in the game. And if our small team is rolling, we just roll with them until, we have to go sub because we feel like they might be a little tired and move to the big lineup.
As for the Hoosiers, they get Nebraska. That's on the road, 8 o'clock on Fox Friday coming up. Also over on IBC. It's a big game for them. It's a quad one win.
It's definitely a big one. All right, Pacers back to practice today. We had Rick Carlisle on the show this morning. What will be the focus as the Pacers hit the practice floor not only today but Thursday in a quiet week of games? I'm not saying that the issues are necessarily the same as it was this time last year, but I remember you came on with Rick Carlisle. Right after a loss.
Cut that off right there. That's Kevin Bowen. That does not sound like
the Pacers head coach. I think my voice and Rick Carlisle are probably two
I was
very
like, wait a
different
minute.
voices on that.
Carlisle doesn't sound like that.
Nonetheless, a very committed focus to the Pacers. Said this to you earlier, Andy, the easiest schedule in the NBA right now, and you're 10-15. I think that just kind of adds to the disappointment so far. It'll be the Sixers coming up on Friday. It'll be the Pelicans on Sunday. Again, the Pacers will practice 2 out of the next 3 days.
Monday Night Football last night, 27-20. Bengals over the Cowboys, Week 14 in the books. You got anything else?
Butler
Heisman
action
Trophy
tonight there. It'll be North Dakota State. They gun a bunch of three-pointers, so that'll be something to keep an eye on. Butler, of course, been very good in defending the three. They cannot afford another loss like this. They actually have a decent non-conference resume outside of the Austin Peay loss, but very important. Take care of business tonight. And like you said, the Heisman Trophy, the 4 finalists, it'll be Travis Hunter taking it home, Ashton Genty likely to finish second. Dylan Gabriel, Cam Ward rounds out the 4 finalists on that end.
All right, coming up on the other side, some of these Barry Odom quotes. He's speaking right now to the Purdue faithful there in West Lafayette. What did the new coach have to say? We'll tell you next year on The Fan. All right, guys, if your family is in need for new windows, you've been thinking about it now, it's a big purchase for the last several months, you need to check out my good friends at Universal Windows Direct, 317-659-7574. You can call that number for a free, quick in-home estimate. If you want to check out their products, you can do so online today at uwd.com. And right now, Universal, they got a great deal for listeners of The Fan. We've been telling you for several months now. For every 2 windows you buy, you get the next 2 free. So you buy 2, you get 2. You buy 4, you get 4. You buy 8, you get 8. There's no limit. It's a great deal. Again, check them out online, uwd.com. And get this, right now, Universal is backing everything up with that true lifetime warranty as long as you own your home. And get this, 20 years to the next homeowner if you do.
Opening press conference for Barry Odom underway. Purdue football coach will share some quotes from that here in just a second. Hope to have the head coach on hopefully tomorrow. We'll see how that plays out. Reminder, Rick Carlisle joined us earlier. That'll be up on the podcast. I think no surprise here, but boy, it is quite the honor. Your Time Athlete of the Year is one Caitlin Clark.
I like it. How about that?
I don't know
Time
the history
Magazine, baby.
of
Let's
that
go.
award, but I'm going to guess there are a lot of very, very important and very notable and famous athletes that have taken home that honor.
I would say that's the case. Corbin, when's the last time you opened a Time Magazine? You have any idea? You have no idea, do you? Have you ever opened a Time Magazine?
I didn't even know Time Magazine was still a thing.
It is still a thing. Come on, Corbin.
Gen Z comment out of Corbin.
It
here
really
on
is.
This Tuesday
Although he
morning.
says that I haven't opened one. I think I've went to the website a few times. Congratulations to her. How about that? Who do you think was runner-up?
Probably Kurt Signetti, right?
I think it probably was.
I have no idea.
Is that the better poll question? Who should be Time Athlete of the Year, Kirk Signetti or Caitlin Clark?
Travis Kelce. I have no idea. How does it work? You got to do something off the floor,
By the
right?
way, speaking of Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift's damn concert for 3 years, the Eras Tour, finally came to an end, KB. Finally. The highest grossing
Where'd she end
tour
up?
of all
British
time.
Columbia? Or
Where did she end? I don't know. She had like 3 shows in Toronto. I don't know why I know that. That's the end of the knowledge that I had. Who did we have on yesterday who says they bought their daughter tickets?
Pete Sampson.
Was it Pete Sampson who bought his tickets?
One thing, well, I guess, we are going to make sure that we give Caitlin Clark probably her proper praise here coming up later this year. It's a great idea that you texted me about yesterday. I think we'll start it. Do we decide Monday's kind of where we're targeting?
Yeah, we're targeting Monday, yeah.
So what we're going to do is, well, go ahead. Share with the
Well,
audience.
this
is
is
your idea.
Well, it's the end of the year, obviously. I think we do 10's enough as a countdown. The top 10 stories of the year in the area. Now, I don't know if we want to do the state, more just central Indiana, just, Indianapolis. We can't do just Indianapolis because then it's like Bloomington, Kirk Signetti, obviously, and IU football is going to be near the top of that list. So I'm fine with doing the entire state of Indiana. I can't think of anything that happened like, I don't know, what would have happened? I'm trying to think of my old stomping grounds in southern Indiana that would be in the top 10.
Well,
I don't think there's anything.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of fun. I just did a quick little run through in my brain yesterday when you texted me like, oh, wow, I kind of forgot about this, kind of forgot about that. So we'll enjoy that. We'll do a little countdown. We'll start it coming up on Monday and lead into New Year's with that. Barry Odom is checking all the boxes here at his opening press conference from West Lafayette. Feel free to share anything, Andy, that stands out to you. Odom saying here, we'll be very, very explosive on offense and score a lot of points. Defensively, very, very tough, aggressive attacking. On that end, Nathan Baird points out here that things are aligned here, Odom says. It's going to be a quick turnaround. I do not believe in rebuild projects. That's one of those quotes that sounds great.
Yeah, that's fine.
On the opening press conference, and then if you go 4 wins and 4 wins, you might regret it.
Yeah, I think Purdue fans need to guard against what happened in Indiana. What happened in Indiana is just not going to be something that happens, I don't want to say too many times, but I feel like it's not going to happen again. It's just not. In fact, it reminds me a little bit when I covered Kentucky football.
Now, you say that because you don't think you'll bring UNLV players, or you think that
I just don't think that
everything added up in terms of good JMU players and manageable schedule.
I feel like I feel like this season is striking lightning. Like if you ask me, Kirk Signetti's talking. I don't. What's his over under next year? Like I'm asking, is it 7.5? Is IU going to be a 9-win team? 9-10 win team next year? Is that what we're all going to kind of
the
expect?
Non-conference schedule is worse than it was this year, and
you can schedule 4 wins. There is no doubt about that. So, I think this is going to be more of a traditional rebuild. My main takeaway with Barry Odom was Purdue fans need to realize while it's not going to be Indiana, this is a rebuild. To me, this is a substantial rebuild. There's no recruiting class right now. You're dealing with the portal. I mean, you're dealing with the last couple years. Purdue has lost whatever NFL talent that they had. They've lost the majority, not all, the majority in the last 10 hours. Purdue sophomore edge rusher Will Helt put his name. He's in the portal. This is a guy that 5 sacks, 10 tackle for losses. The reason I bring him up is I always say, we may say, well, what kind of a player is he? Well, who wants him? He set up his first 2 visits, Texas A&M and LSU. So you tell me. Those are 2 teams that are expecting to play big games there in the SEC. So, to me, Barry Odom, this is you won 1 game this year. The conversation, like it was for me with Cignetti year 1, was, can you make a bowl game year 1? Is that silly? If you can schedule 3-4 wins, get a couple wins in the Big Ten, you're on your way. He reminds me, and Purdue reminds me, a little bit of what I followed when Mark Stoops took over Kentucky from Joker Phillips. They were a 2-win football team, losing to everybody. The only 2 teams they could beat were the bye games on their schedule. I think Purdue is that far down. You're not 1-11. You got to find everything. You got to replace defensive talent, offensive line. You got to find a quarterback. You probably got to find a couple quarterbacks that can play. So Barry Odom, he's got a lot of work to do, KB. He's got a lot of work to do.
Our early Twitter poll is up here. Purdue fans, who would you rather have, Bill Belichick or Barry Odom?
What a great question.
Andy, these results will not make you too pleased.
Really?
Barry Odom
please.
at 62.5%.
Fans don't believe that. They're watching the press conference right now, and they're come on. Stop it. Don't embarrass yourself. You would rather have...
You're all in on the Belichick family.
That is nothing against Barry Odom. It makes it sound like I'm slighting Barry Odom.
There goes any chance we had to get Barry Odom on the show tomorrow.
But it's Bill Belichick.
Maybe it's anti-Steve Belichick.
Did Steve Belichick still have the mullet at Washington?
I think I spotted him on the sideline when Indiana played him this year. And
okay.
I think that was...
Did he still have it?
Yeah, on that end here. Coming up in a few, we will do the pop quiz. Reminder, Rick Carlisle with us earlier. It sounded like he expects the Pacers to do something here from a backup center standpoint. They did waive Moses Brown yesterday. They did get, it was kind of a small storyline. We'll have Tony East on tomorrow to talk about it. But they did get a little bit of money. Injury exceptions. You sometimes see this in the NBA from Isaiah Jackson to James Wiseman being out for the year. So I think they've got a little bit of wiggle room. And I remember Tony said with us back when we had him on a few weeks ago, I believe the date is December 15th. When you get to that date in the calendar, guys that were acquired the previous season can then be traded.
Okay, so it's coming then, yeah.
So you weren't allowed, from the start of the year in mid-October or whatever to, the first couple weeks of December. You can't move the guys that you just got on your team. But then starting in mid-December, you can. I'm trying to think when Bruce Brown was traded last year. I guess, was he part of the Pascal Siakam trade?
Boy, I'm going to have to remember that.
I guess he was because he's on the Raptors, isn't he?
Yeah.
So, that trade was more in January there. But that can now start to happen.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up when Brown was, what the exact date he was moved. I'll have to try to find that because I can't remember.
The fact the Pacers have stayed so healthy with their top-line guys, and I'd throw Turner into that group. He's only missed a game or two. That is something that you can't take for granted either. Turner's health since Wiseman and Isaiah Jackson have gone down has been unbelievable. He's been healthy for pretty much every game.
Yeah,
he's playing a ton of minutes.
I hate to say this. What did you say? January 17th, Corbin? I think you just texted us January 17th. So there you go. My question then, I don't know. The Pacers are what at the trade deadline? We still got a good amount of time. And that could be a good thing or a bad thing. It could be a good amount of time, and they could be sinking, having injuries, still not playing good basketball, and we could really, start to have some questions. Again, I go back to what I said is I felt like I knew the identity of this team, and I'm feeling less and less, and I know they've had injuries, that I know the identity of this team. Do you think they're buyers or sellers? And then, I think on top of it, I know this area. I know you guys for years. JMV talks about it a lot. His backing of Miles Turner. Don't you kind of feel like Miles Turner is going to be the guy that yet again we talk about?
Well, I think weirdly, are you trying to accomplish both in the buy and sell category?
Probably.
Do you feel like, yes, you are selling a person that is an asset to however you want to label that, whether they're a good player, whether they have, a high contract value, but then also at the same time, you'd be buying something that you think is upgrading your roster. So all questions that will probably be moved more to the front burner here in the coming weeks, especially if the Pacers continue to be in this tailspin. So they'll practice later today, again on Thursday, and they've got the Sixers coming up on Friday. And last time out, the Sixers did have their big three, Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, and Paul George, and they don't play until Friday. So very well could see those three.
Who's the
lineup.
who's the Duke guard? Who's the rookie there who does all the TikTok and Instagram dances?
Oh,
Oh,
McCain?
what's his name? Oh yeah, he's pretty good too.
Yeah.
He's pretty good too. I've watched him play a little bit.
But Buddy Hield's in Golden State, right?
Yeah, he is. Last thing on Turner, I mean, right now this year, I mean, his points are down, especially from last year, but down 4 points from his career. His rebounds are down, lowest in his career right now. His defensive rebound numbers are easily the lowest of his career. His three-point percentage is the lowest of his career and about 12, 13 percentage points less than last year. His field goal percentage is down from last year. Not bad for his career, but is down from last year. I mean, you hate saying it, but unfortunately, Miles Turner's had kind of a rough game. Or kind of a rough year. So, I don't know. We can take a break. Coming up on the other end. Pop quiz time. Did Scotty send it? I need to look. Did he send one?
Scotty sent it.
Scotty sent it. All right. So, pop quiz. We'll get Scotty back in here, and you can be a part of it as well. 239-1070. It's a Tuesday on the Fan.
Yeah, we didn't really get into a whole lot of the ramifications of Cincinnati winning last night. They still are way out of the playoff picture, Andy. I mean, they'd have to run the table. So updated playoff odds. Colts right now, 29% chance to make the playoffs. Their opponent coming up on Sunday, the Broncos, 71%.
Wow. Yeah,
now
it's about right.
Denver has a 2-game lead on Indy. And just to throw a couple more numbers, and I hope it's not overly confusing at you, with a Colts win, 29% becomes 54%. With a Colts loss, that becomes 6%. Denver, with a win, they would rise to 91%.
Wow, AFC would be about done.
With a loss, they would fall to a coin flip.
Yeah.
50.
So, again, there's just, I mean, to me, it's a game of the weekend, the 425 game between the Colts and Broncos. And I'll even say, I don't want to, because of injuries, I don't want to make it sound like it's going to sound, but the Colts are lucky that, Tua misses 4 games. He missed 4 games. Is that what it was? He went on IR, right? He missed 4 games. The Dolphins just, without him, fall apart. Offensively, they can do nothing. So you dodged a bullet there. I mean, you really did. And then number 2, you also dodged a bullet that the Cincinnati Bengals cannot start a season worth a damn. And then, really after the first month or so, 3-point loss to the Ravens, 1-point loss to the Ravens, touchdown loss to the Chargers, 6-point loss to the Steelers, and then you go back the first month of the season, they lost 3 games by 10 points, 11 points. So, they have lost so many close games. If 2 of those close games go differently, those odds are completely blown to smithereens. Yeah, and the Colts are really out of it, quite frankly.
I would say specifically with Tua missing the 4 games, the fact that he missed your game.
Yeah.
It's not just that, Miami went, 1-3 without him.
I think they went 1-3. Did they beat New England? Was that they won that game at the end, I want to say?
But the fact that they missed your game, because, again, that head-to-head is huge. I mean, right now Miami has the same record as Indy, and when you look at Miami's schedule the rest of the way, it's not super daunting. I know they still have Houston, but I think they play the Jets again, and I don't know, maybe they do play New England one more time, so it's not the most daunting end to the season. All right, it is time for the pop quiz. And Andy Sweeney at number 1 through 8 as Scotty has returned.
He's back. He's feeling good.
Certainly the pop quiz looks a little different than you and
Scotty's got a new hat, too. I like it. Or at least it's a hat that I haven't seen him wear, so I like that.
I like it, Scotty.
I do. Let's go fast fingers, Corbin. Let's go caller number 1. Grant, good morning. How are you, man?
Yo, hey, pretty good. How about yourself?
Hey, Grant, how are you?
Good.
Grant, is Grant Hill the greatest athlete named Grant, or who am I missing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is the greatest athlete named Grant. Absolutely. Grant Brescher.
Grant Linedecker, the Butler AD.
Boy, you're going back. I'm trying to think of other Grants that we've had in sports. I mean, like Horace Grant, but that's a last name. I don't think that counts.
Jerry and Grant on Notre Dame's Elite 8 run.
It's not a bad
nephew
one.
Of Horace Grant. Well, Grant, this pop quiz certainly looks a little different than Andy or I's. Andy Sweeney, go ahead and throw number 1, Grant's way.
All right, Grant, let's get a winner on this Tuesday. Question number 1, Notre Dame will host Indiana in the first round of the college football playoff a week from Friday, if you haven't heard. The Irish lead the all-time series 23-5-1. The question, though, when was the last time the Hoosiers beat the Irish in football? Was it 1991, 1956, 1950, or 1906? Good luck.
Let's go with 1956.
How about another guess? Very close, though.
1950.
There we go.
Number 2 here, Grant, name the only NBA team that has also beaten the Pacers that is undefeated at home this season. Cavs, Grizzlies, Thunder, or Magic?
The Grizzlies.
Question number...
Where are you going?
Yeah, which one do you want to settle with?
I don't know if I'd go with either.
Let's see here. Yeah, we'll go with the Cavs.
I don't know if you heard me. I said I don't know if I'd go with either.
Yeah. What were the other ones? Orlando? I'm not sure. I didn't hear the others.
Cavs, Grizzlies, Thunder, Magic.
I've given them a lot. I can't say
I
anymore.
mean, I don't know what you want. That's a difficult one.
Orlando Magic.
Oh, Grant's got some great vocals.
I like the singing.
Yeah. Colts little national anthem singer in a couple weeks.
Question number 3. The NBA Cup quarterfinals begin tonight, Grant. Last year's NBA Cup champions, the Lakers, and the runner-up, of course, the Pacers, have already been eliminated. How many of the 8 teams in this season's NBA Cup quarterfinals made it to the knockout round last season? 1, 2, 3, or 4?
Let's say 3.
Grant, are you a singer?
Yeah, I can sing.
Okay. Do you have a favorite tune this time of year? You know, a lot of popular Christmas music or anything that you enjoy singing?
2. Some Jingle Bells.
Okay. All right. We can certainly get behind that. Number 4 here. Name the NFL teams that are unbeaten at home. We've got 2 of them.
Yeah, the Chiefs and the Commanders.
Commanders. That was a wild guess.
Oh, man. Well, the Chiefs is right.
Let's go with the Lions.
Question number 5. On this day in 2016, Lamar Jackson at U of L, he became the youngest Heisman Trophy winner in 19 years, or winner at 19 years, 11 months, and 3 days of age. Jackson is one of 4 players to win the Heisman before his 20th birthday. Which of the following did not win the Heisman before turning 20 years old? Archie Griffin, Jameis Winston, Mark Ingram, Rashad Salam.
Rashad Salam.
Well, that was a pretty mediocre effort there, I would say, from
You did
Grant.
okay, Grant.
1950, correct. Irish and IU. Scotty, before 91, the last time they met was in the 50s? Yes. So they've only met one time since 1950-something.
That's so perfectly football, college athletics. That's so perfectly college athletics that those 2 teams didn't play for 40, 50 years.
I mean, should either of
But
them
we got to play Mercer.
Should either
please.
of them have been playing each other?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean,
Why?
it doesn't have to be every year, but a 3-game set, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Notre Dame's doing that with Purdue. Do they really need to do that to IU?
Yeah. Yeah, why not? I don't think you have to do it every year, but like, you know, the three, like, I think in basketball you should do it every year. Like, I think like Kansas and Missouri, yeah, you should do it. But yeah, I think you do a 3-year set, you know, in 2030, and then maybe you go off for several years, a home and home somewhere, or you play in Indianapolis. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think they should. Magic
undefeated at home. He actually got that one right after a lot of hand holding. Is that it? Did he get 3 right?
No. The answer was 2 for number 3. How many of the 8 teams in this season's NBA Cup quarterfinals made it to the knockout round? The answer is 2. It's Knicks and Bucks. Undefeated NFL teams at home, Bills and Chiefs. And Archie Griffin was over 20 years old when he won his Heisman Trophy. Again, Lamar Jackson won it in 2016 on this day. 19 years, 11 months, and 3 days of age. How about that?
So the thought is, again,
Bobby Petrino.
Travis Hunter is the overwhelming favorite here to win the Heisman?
Yes.
Ashton Genty finishing second?
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. I got no problem with that. I'm good with him being the guy who's going to win the Heisman. I mean, Travis Hunter should be the Heisman Trophy winner. If he went number 1 to a team that didn't have a quarterback, I'd be fine with that too.
Reminder, Rick Carlisle up on the podcast. Hoping to have Barry Odom join us tomorrow. John might have him on later today. I know Barry Odom just wrapped up his opening press conference there at Purdue.
Yeah, again, like KB mentioned, podcast 1075thefan.com. Jake and Jimmy coming up at noon. JMV at 3. Have a good afternoon.